When tattoos go horribly wrong. Inkings that should never have happened. Memes. The thought that a lot of people have dead memes from 2017 on their arms or legs is kind of funny. Knew of a guy who once had dubstep tattooed on his chest in very, very large letters. He also insisted that dubstep was the future of music and was here to stay. I have a Tramp Stamp that says "No regrets" in very fancy cursive. It's the only tattoo my dad laughed at rather than cringed, so I can judge no one, is what I'm saying. Tattoos that are gifts from you to somebody else. For example, for your birthday, I got your birth date tattooed on me. That and tattoos with spelling errors. As an example, were you really there if you think you were there? That last one is spelled T-H-E-I-R. Oh my god. I don't know the exact English word, but in German it's called butt antlers. I'm not sure what it's actually supposed to represent, but it kinda looks like you've got a deer tossing your salad inside your pants. The worst one I ever saw was Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes peeing on stuff, except the one from Hot Rod with one stream of urine going on the TV set and one going on the FM radio with an AM radio safely dry in the middle on a magic carpet? Couples tattoos like portraits or names. Mostly when they proudly tell you it's because they've been together for 5 months and just know that they'll stay together forever. Oh. I work with the deceased. I've seen a direct correlation between "only God can judge me" tattoos and being a victim of firearm homicide. Juggalo tattoos don't bode well for MVAs. Tasmanian devils go hand in hand with gastric bleeds from chronic alcohol consumption, and the clinically depressed seemed to really like dolphins. Any tattoos of men and women's naughty bits makes me cringe. I also saw one of a butthole once. A defendant in the courtroom I clerked in during law school had "homicide" tattooed on his face, over his eyebrows. Not a great look. Yep, that's what you want the jury staring at the entire time while you're explaining that you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was actually just tomato sauce from an over-enthusiastically condimented hamburger all over your hands. Nothing says "I've been to prison for cooking crystal in my trailer" like a Joker neck or face tattoo. Former tattoo artist here, and it has to be infinity symbols, especially when they want them to be unique. So you have to spend 3 hours drawing up different ways of cramming little McCasley and Braxton's names, birthdays, birth weights, blood types, and favorite ice cream flavors in there. Fine, I'll find a way. I can work for my money. Oh, and can it also have a thin blue line in here for my husband? Sure, lady. And maybe some birds breaking off it, because my meemaw loves birds. Yeah, okay. And can you do it on the side of my finger in white ink? Okay, screw you, get out. Lips on the neck. Like, I get it, you're a gangster with an attitude problem and probably want to fight. Sayings, especially ones that span multiple limbs or areas. I was in the army with a guy from Texas that thought he was hard as woodpecker lips. He had "Cowboy the F up" tattooed across his forearms, ostensibly so that if he put his fists up to fight you, you'd read it and, I don't know, be scared or something. He never even got into any fights that I know of. But due to the size he wanted it in and crappy planning, one arm said "Cowboy the," and the other arm simply read "Frick up." And he immediately became known as Cowboy the Fudge Up. I once stood in line behind a lady who had like the bad tattoo parade going from the nape of her neck. She had "Only God can judge me," something in Asian characters, and an ugly, faded, poorly drawn crucifix. Not safe for work tattoos. Like, it's cool that you really love your girlfriend's hoo-ha, or that you want to showcase the ginormous imaginary member you have, but the rest of us really don't want to see that. To be fair though, I haven't really seen these much in person, mostly online. My ex, 6 months after we broke up, got a tattoo of me tied up shibari style on his lower arm and sent it to me. The last conversation we had while we were together was about going to a shibari class. This is an educated man who works in an office and will never be able to roll his shirt sleeves up now. Bad portraits and misspellings. Armpit hoo-has. It's when someone gets 2 women's legs tattooed around their armpit hair. Yes! Today I learned this is a thing and people are capable of being even trashier than I thought. Those creepy faces of babies which look like there's a little demon on your body. When I was in college, my friend was talking to some girl he worked with and she brought her very unattractive, trashy older friend. The friend had a tattoo on her shoulder of a face. I said, "Oh wow, you must really like E.T. That movie scared the crap out of me as a kid." I was totally being honest, by the way. I thought it was E.T. Turns out that was her daughter. Her daughter just happened to look like E.T. the extraterrestrial. You know, baby faces are so hard to get right. They don't have the same proportions as adults. Even drawings of babies are creepy 9 out of 10 times. Just a couple of days ago, some writing on some dude saying, "Kana isn't a B word." Yes, they wrote isn't instead of is and spelled karma with an N. The people who put words from a language they don't understand because it's quirky and 99% of the time it isn't proofread, so it doesn't say what they think it does. That reminds me of this guy who got something in Japanese tattooed on his arm. He thought it said mystical or some crap like that. Some Japanese guy saw the picture and said, "Actually, that means idiot foreigner." There should be somewhere online where if you intend to get a tattoo in a different language, you can get it proofread by someone who knows the language. I saw a kid with the 100 emoji tattooed on his forearm. I don't even have a joke to make about that. One's where the person gets a tattoo of something using either their real nip or belly button to replace the tattoo of a person's nip or belly button. So we're talking Buddha with a real belly button here. It's frickin' gross. Don't get one. That stupid cliche thing that says life one way and death the other. When I was 15, I was hanging out with a group of friends and we get a phone call from our green herb guy and he says he's doing tattoos for $20 in his basement. There were 6 of us and the car only fit 5. I said, "You guys are idiots if you think you're going to get a good tattoo from that guy." One guy got love on one wrist and hate on the other, and it looked like a child wrote it. Another guy got a Celtic cross on his arm that looked like crap. Another got a word written on his side across his ribs, and the tattoo artist told him to keep his arm stretched up high while he was doing it. Now, when he puts his arm down, the word gets squished together. Somehow, they still thought they were so frickin' cool afterwards, and showed them to everyone at school while everyone made fun of them. The love-hate guy kept them pretty private and is also the only one of them that's a good person. Any image that incorporates bodily hair. One my sister did for a guy on his arm of a juice carton with a woman's reproductive organ on the side saying kitty juice, but obviously using the other word for cats that starts with a P. If I remember correctly, it also had a droplet coming out of the end of the straw. Ugh. I was in line behind a guy who had a tattoo on his neck of 2 obese, undressed cartoon women going at it, tongues hanging out, flying sweat drops, the works. I'm a tattoo artist. Had a regular come into the shop. He was an older swinger type and my coworker tattooed him. He got Pinocchio tattooed right above his junk with his Johnson as the nose and a script that said, "Lie to me." I try not to judge tattoos, but I figured you'd all appreciate this one. Thanks, I hate it. And I'd like to imagine that anyone who went home with him hated it too. But then again, the kind of person to get a tattoo like that probably already had a lot of distinct personality traits and, well, warning signs, so maybe he was already bringing home people inclined to enjoy it. Had a lady come into the store I was working in with a big neck tattoo that said, "Daddy's Girl." It might have been one of the most shocking things I've ever seen. I knew a girl who tattooed her firstborn's name as a tramp stamp. Not what I would want someone to be looking at while tagging from behind. I know a girl who got her deceased father's face also as a tramp stamp. My buddy said that when he was hitting it from behind, it was the most awkward thing ever. A misspelled tattoo. I mean, a purposefully misspelled tattoo makes sense. I meant the ones that were by accident. I know a guy from high school who got the word stronger as his first tattoo, and when he showed people, everyone noticed it was spelled as stonger. He then went on and tried to make up a BS story about the missing R having a deep meaning. Any tattoo with something in Chinese or Japanese written on it. I'm learning Japanese because why not? And I saw this guy with a tattoo saying sakana or fish. I was like, "Hey, what does that mean?" And he said, "It means poison." He might have typed poison into Google Translate. I saw someone recently with an Arabic script tattoo that said, "I don't speak Arabic." At least kind of funny though. Any tattoos that have name plus name together forever. Because if that relationship goes down and the two break up, that is going to be so awkward. My first tattoo, I went to get my daughter's name into her birthday. The guy tried so hard to talk me out of it, and I couldn't understand why. He goes, "Man, a name and a date is just going to turn into a bad memory one day." And then I realized he thought this was a girlfriend or something. I told him it was my kid, and he goes, "Oh, all right, let me go set up." And yes, I guess there's a small possibility that the tattoo artist thought that I was dating a minor, given that my daughter's name had her birthday next to it, but he probably just figured it was an anniversary or didn't look to see what the date actually was. I think we're fine. More related stories. My daughter's mum, my ex, has my name tattooed on her wrist, and I laugh to myself every time I see her. Some vague inspirational quote that in all likelihood the tattooee didn't even choose before they went to the tattoo parlor, but rather selected from the pre-chosen list written up by said parlor. Yeah, well, only God can judge me. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Barbed wire around the arm that doesn't even go all the way around because it hurt too bad. The irony is strong. Don't mind me, I'm just reading these replies to see if my tattoos are on here. The tattoo of a clown holding a gat smoking a J on my leg. Tattoos of brands. It's basically free advertising. At least email them what they'd pay you if you advertise for them until you die. Domino's actually did a promotion in Russia where if you got a tattoo of their logo in a visible place, you'd get a free pizza for the next 100 years. So many people did it that Domino's stopped the promotion rather quickly. The only God can judge me tattoo. No, believe me, we're all judging you. I don't care what you want tattooed on your body. I do, however, hate seeing crappy work. Poor line work, muddy colors, incoherent shading, and disproportionate shaping. My cousin let his friend tattoo him a bunch. The friend was just beginning tattoo school and needed to practice. My cousin was broke and wanted free tattoos. He didn't get what he paid for, and he still got ripped off. They look absolutely horrible. I saw a tattoo on some guy's leg yesterday. It was a Confederate flag with "Southern by chance" at the top and "White by the grace of God" at the bottom. One time I saw a lower back tattoo that was a bullseye, you know, the Target logo, and it really solidified for me why these are called tramp stamps. A guy came into my bar and was chatting to some girl about his tattoos and how they all meant something really important and signified a part of his life. Apparently, the tattoo of New York's skyline that said New York above was about the time he went to New York. It was so deep, I wept. Names of significant others. My philosophy is you should only ever get the names of people tattooed that will never change. Parents and children. And I guess dead people are also acceptable. Just make sure that whoever's name you decide to get tattooed on you permanently, you're okay with it being there in like 50 years, no matter what happens. Or get it small enough that it's easy to cover up. My friend got one of some Viking symbol on his chest. Mind you, he was like fully Filipino with no relation to Scandinavia at all. We all told him it was cringe as hell. He passed away a few months later in a cliff-jumping accident, and a few of us got tattoos in his honor. I got the same stupid Viking tattoo on my chest now. No regrets, though. You know what, guys? These answers made me feel better about myself and my life decisions. So thanks, Internet. I ran into a guy who had a tattoo of a rooster on a noose on his calf. When asked what it represented, he simply said, "I've got a cockerel that hangs below my knee." Hyper-realistic adult movie star facial tattoos. Yes, you read that correctly. This is actually a thing. I just can't imagine getting that permanently put on your body for display. Bad butthole tats. Are there any good butthole tats that I'm not aware of? Famous people. I get it that you're really a fan of said famous person, but to permanently ink their face onto yourself is borderline crazy in my opinion. The symbol of the Third Reich. I feel bad when I see people of my age that have those barbed wire tattoos. Literally everyone had them, so they all looked the same. Tramp stamps were pretty bad too. At least the barbed wire did look kinda cool. I've never seen a tramp stamp that I liked. I refuse to sink next to an anchor. That is literally what anchors are made for. I was in the supermarket today and I saw a man with a full-body Harley Quinn tattoo on his arm. The Margot Robbie movie one. You know, a former coworker of mine has Jared Leto's Joker and Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn tattooed just below his collarbones. He also has portraits of several rappers tattooed on his arms and legs. Some of my other coworkers had to talk him out of getting a portrait of Channing Tatum on his ribs. You know, just think about this for a minute, man. You're gonna get Magic Mike tattooed on you? I'm pretty sure that changed his mind. I mean, oh boy. Your favorite cartoon character? Sure, you do you. And I guess Margot Robbie's been in the role long enough now to be considered an iconic aspect. I wouldn't get it myself, but sure. If you think the DCEU era was better than what we have now, I disagree, but I respect your opinion. But if you were going to go gung-ho enough into pre-James Gunn DC to define yourself by immortalizing Jared Leto's Joker on your body, then my friend, I can say I would probably not be able to help myself but laugh at you in public. Like, it wouldn't be intentional, I'm just not sure I could help myself. I guess it's marginally better than a Morbius tattoo. Godsmack Son. I know someone with that tattoo. It was their first, and they loved it. No regrets, as they say. Baby faces. You have a child, I get it, you love him, but he will be a generic newborn for a few months, and you'll think fondly ever after about his grown-up version with specific facial features. His baby picture will mean very little after a while. Lame calligraphy of the Pinterest type. Those little moustaches on the pointer finger. Tattoo artist here. Tribal died in the 90s and early 2000s. Let's leave it there. Be happy, be free, live, laugh, stay positive, daddy's little girl, daddy's princess. These tattoos they get, at least put some thought and make it original or unique or at least interesting. Third Reich and Confederate stuff. Just to be clear, both of these causes were abominable in their own time, but those who advocate them today are just such desperate, pathetic losers. Get your frickin' lives together. Once I saw a guy in a gym who had an elephant tattooed on his crotch. Guess what was the trunk? I used to do airbrush face and body painting, and I was asked many times for full frontal elephant. The airbrush stuff is cold, let me tell you. Southern Cross stars, for Aussies who think the stars are only visible from our country. Yeah, I wondered how far down I'd have to scroll until I found mine. I've got it on my left shoulder blade. I'm not Australian though, I grew up on a US Army base near the equator, and I could see both the North Star and the Southern Cross in the night sky. My dad owned a boat he named the Southern Cross after both the constellation and a line from a Jimmy Buffett song. I spent many hours of my childhood on that boat, so I got the Southern Cross tat on the 10th anniversary of my dad's passing in memoriam. I did my research before I got it, and I did find out about it being a nationalist symbol, but since mine's stylized, easily covered, and I haven't been to Oz since I was 12, I think I'm okay. Tribal tattoos on suburbanites. A friend of mine got a one-night stand's name tattooed on her foot while her fiancé was in prison, so that's wrong on at least 3 different levels, but basically anything with the name of a significant other immediately makes me think there's real potential for regret there. Live, laugh, love usually gets a wretch. Oh, and Hatchet Man tattoos, because I have one and I cringe whenever I see it. Kanji as well, because it's usually mistranslated. That amuses me more than anything else, though. I got Pokemon tattoos, so I'm not judging anyone. Bro, I literally have "That's no moon" tattooed in Galactic Standard or Arubesh on my butt. Your Pokemon tats are dope. Pure and simple. YOLO. The Rebel flag. Where I'm from, that's the usual tattoo, and it makes me cringe. What else is a Star Wars fan supposed to get a tattoo of? The Superior Empire? Big Bible quotes on girls' thighs or angel wings on their back. A crush of mine got a tattoo of Hank Williams on her chest. Totally killed my interest in her. Imagine being in the middle of doing the deed and seeing an old guy in a cowboy hat staring at you while she demands you go harder. No, sir, I'm out. I had a friend with an arrow pointing down to his junk with the label Sarah's. He's now with Dawn. My girlfriend used to get her hair cut by a guy who had a big mural on his back showing Jesus Christ on a cross doing the deed with a zombie. That's a pretty weird one. Post Malone's face. The pair of red lips tattoos make me cringe. When I was getting one of my tattoos, some gangster came in asking for a price on a pair of lips. After he walked out, all the tattoo artists went laughing on about how stupid that tattoo was. I actually have one of those. An ex once asked me to get a tattoo of her lipstick stain on my ribs, but I said the only person I'd do that for was myself. So now, as a statement for self-love, I have my own red lipstick print on my ribs. It's actually one of my favorite tattoos so far. Belly button face. Probably a tie between anything homemade by a rookie with a tattoo tool bought off Amazon and the Mary J. Leaf or 420 tattoos. I've got nothing against the wacky tobacco, but don't whine about your life constantly and wonder why you can't get better than a kitchen job when you have a homemade leaf tattoo covering the majority of your arm, wrist to elbow. Nothing screams white trash more than a Looney Tunes tattoo. I mean, I enjoy Looney Tunes, don't get me wrong. However, Tweety or Tasmanian Devil are upmost levels of cringe. Literally anyone that has too small tattoos and is constantly posting about how discriminated against people with tattoos are and how pathetic all of the Karens of the world are for being offended by tattoos. Like, calm down, Becky, nobody's ever actually said anything rude to you about your 3-inch faith tattoo, written in such swirly cursive that it could be a roller coaster at "My whole identity is Victimhood Island." Chinese writing when they have no cultural connection to it and got it just because it looks cool, especially Western names translated into Chinese. I'm going to go with insane clown posse face paint permanently tatted on the face. I've seen this in real life and it always takes me by surprise. I try to hide it, but I just know that I do a double take. I was at church as a kid and this woman there had a massive script on her outer forearm that read the particular substance she seemed to like or used to like in all caps. Something that makes a statement about yourself now but might not later. Like if I were to get a tattoo of Thomas the Tank Engine on my chest as opposed to me being a long-time Transformers fan and putting an Autobot and Decepticon symbol on either shoulder. I might do that when I get tattoos. Not Thomas, though. It's not the kind of tattoos, it's where it goes that makes me cringe. I often see people who are really young get tattoos in some very peculiar places for somebody who has no idea what they want to do in their life.
What traits in girls do you find attractive or impressive aside from physical appearance, guys? My wife's laughs are literally everything. Sometimes she watches a show on her laptop in our room and I hear her cracking up from down the hall. I absolutely love it. One of the main reasons I started dating my current girlfriend was because she accidentally spilled popcorn in my car after our first date. She profusely apologized and asked if she could clean it up. My car was a POS, so I didn't care. When I got home, she texted me apologizing again. I don't know why, but her caring about spilling popcorn in my crappy car made me realize, hey, maybe she could care about me too. Aww, she spilled popcorn into your heart. Ah man, I had a similar situation except I was the spiller. Third date in a city on a sunny afternoon. Coffee all over her light blue jeans and she just laughed it off. I knew then she had an amazing outlook on life. We got engaged last week. Gotta love people that don't let spilled milk ruin their days. Shows a lot about their character. Accountability. If she can openly admit when she's wrong or that she messed up, that's attractive, as it shows maturity and the ability to judge yourself impartially, and it means you are less likely to repeat the mistake. This also means that you feel for her if not only love, it's respect, which is just as important. Wow, this is fantastic. I've dated girls in the past who would never just say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry. I get that it's hard sometimes, but it's relieving to admit wrongdoing and ask for forgiveness. But when you obsessively chase not having done wrong in the first place, it's actually a tax on both parties. I 100% agree with this. I'll take it a step further by saying when you text or call a woman and she doesn't answer but later says, hey, I'm sorry I couldn't respond, I got caught up with insert reason here, instead of just saying, I was busy, it shows that they respect you enough to let you know that there was a real reason they couldn't respond. This is nice because they don't owe you an explanation of why they didn't respond, but them doing so shows an amount of caring on their part. Things like confidence, a good sense of humor, intelligence, all of that is super important. But for me, the sexiest thing a woman can do is be calm. Not calm as in quiet, as in calm when crap goes sideways or something unexpected happens. Having someone who is reliable and stable as a partner is so crucial in life. I didn't realize how attractive that sounds until I read it. To not have to burn calories on dealing with my partner and the situation, that's so hot right now. It's probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my father. He explained that when every possible thing goes wrong, the last thing you want is a partner that makes it even harder by panicking, getting angry, or making things worse. Plus, the tenacity, toughness, and resilience, it's freaking sexy. Don't get me wrong, I love taking care of a lady as much as the next guy, but when a girl just buckles down and solves a problem in a cool, collected manner, man, that's an instant spiritual and physical boner. Spiritual boners are some of the best boners. I'm loving this thread. My wife is baseline stressed and an anxious person. She's always doing a lot of stuff for her career and taking on way too much. So I feel like the calm caretaker a lot of the time. However, in times of crisis, she locks in and is such a calm and collected source of comfort. I had one horrible disc herniation a few years back that resulted in such bad pain I was writhing and screaming in agony. She called an ambulance, explained what was happening, and made sure I was sorted. She called my parents, handled them, and made sure everything I needed, I had. She was an absolute rock star. I can't describe how grateful I was and how taken care of I felt. From there, we sort of realized that the day-to-day maintenance I'm better at, but in times of crisis, she's second to none. I'll never forget that though. I never felt so loved and cared for in my life. Anxiety can be a superpower. It's the fear of the unknown that affects the anxious. So you're constantly worried about what's going to happen and thinking through different scenarios in your head, etc. Then when an emergency happens, you just lock into problem solver mode because you run through these drills in your head 1,000 times before. It's awesome that you guys found each other to balance things out. As someone who has been diagnosed with panic disorder and severe anxiety, I can confirm that when crap hits the fan, I'm on my toes and ready to handle the situation. Not exclusive to girls, but having a hobby or interest that they are very knowledgeable and passionate with, that's great. Even if it's something super benign like painting their nails or baseball, I just love people who can ramble on about their interest, especially if I'm not into it. It's like peeking into another world. Knew a girl that was into knitting, but not just like I knew how to cross stitch. Full on had a setup where she would turn wool into yarn and even had a favorite small sheep farm that she would order from exclusively. She was interesting as hell to me. Exactly. So many times I'll ask a woman, hell, this applies to men just as much, what does she do for fun? And it's almost always scrolling through social media or Netflix. I'll rephrase the question, asking about any sort of active or creative hobbies they do when they aren't relaxing. And it's like they don't understand the difference. You're not wrong that there are a lot of people that spend their free time doing those things, but also in my experience, many people's minds seem to go blank on the specific question. I'm not totally sure why though. This is weird, but I've had success with asking this question. Pretend you have an unexpected week-long staycation starting tomorrow. What are you going to be doing this week? Then they'll tell you about projects, art, home improvement, pets, and things that they've been working on or wanting to get a chance to do. Or maybe they just don't and they're actually not interested in anything other than TV and social media. Either way, you've learned something about them. Critical thinking skills are hot. I would adjust this to curiosity. Curious people who investigate, inquire, and show genuine interest often use critical thinking as a byproduct. I say this impresses me in anyone. When managing people, if I have a curious employee who wants to know why something works the way it does, or wants to find a tool or technology to improve, they are always earmarked for career investment. In women, finding a curious person means that you will be able to find someone who will likely not bore you over the long haul, because curiosity as a personality trait means that she's the type of person to engage in things that are important and keep away that every day is the same creep that tends to infiltrate a relationship. And for clarification for those who say, well, dumb people can be curious too, I think those are missing my meaning. I mean more intellectually curious, and less, what does this electrical socket taste like? I find a woman's voice to be one of the best factors in determining if I'm attracted to a woman. Do you mean like accent, pitch, tone, all of the above? All of the above and what she says. A woman can look stunning, but in opening her mouth she reveals who she truly is. To know if a woman is intelligent, funny, angry, depressed, or even sexy, I don't need to see, I need to hear. Above all else, as a man, I try to listen. The second best advice I ever got about dating was to get the other person to talk, to ask leading questions. The first, of course, is to make them laugh. And a woman's laugh will reveal so much about them. Authenticity and genuine character do not look anything like I've ever seen, but I can hear them. Here's the answer I was looking for. I was a phone hookup operator for over a decade. I initially went into it because random dudes would just go nuts over my voice all of the time. I'd call in for customer support on my phone and the tech guy would ask for my number, and things like that. I still sell my voice for a living, but not in the hookup industry anymore. My clients are all women now, but even though they aren't attracted to me intimately for the most part, I still get comments on my voice. Tons are surprised by my age too. I'm 46, but I still easily sound like I'm in my 20s. I can confirm a nice voice will win me over quickly. Same goes for nice eyes and a good smile. Intelligence. Good looks only go so far when you realize she doesn't even know basic life skills. If they can't have an interesting conversation, then why would you want to spend years with that person? I understand if you're looking for a short-term physical encounter. However, if you are looking for a long-term relationship, the ability to communicate is paramount. 100% agree. The girl I dated before my wife was hot, like smoking hot. Her hobbies were basically working out and eating like a rabbit. Hands down the most physically attractive girl I ever dated. But that was it, nothing more. She never had anything interesting to say, never had an opinion on anything, never laughed at jokes or funny movies. She was just a void of personality and took no pleasure in the joys of life. I eventually had to break it off. Now my wife, on the other hand, is the polar opposite. She's beautiful, but she's just a normal human. She's the funniest person I know. She knows what's going on in the world and is driven to make it a better place. And most importantly, she's been extremely supportive of me, and she's the one person I know I can talk about anything with. It's like having a best friend that I can play no-clothes games with. Years ago, I had been dating a girl who was getting a degree in neuroscience. Even though I wasn't a scientist of any sort, I loved talking to her and listening to her go on and on about the brain and the central nervous system. Not only was she smart, but she was passionate and interesting. We split up when I moved to Los Angeles without her. One night, I was at a bar with a friend, and I was talking to a girl who had moved to LA to be a singer. I asked her something like, "So, you're a singer, eh?" And then this girl responded by launching into a full-voiced version of "I Will Always Love You" in the middle of the bar. In that moment, I vividly remember thinking, I miss my neuroscientist. 2 weeks later, I took a plane to the East Coast, called her up and wooed her from her new boyfriend. She moved to SoCal and got her PhD in neuroscience. We got married and have 3 awesome children. She still blows my mind when she talks about her work. I find women that are the complete opposite of me hella attractive. Not sure why, but at least on 3 separate occasions, I have been attracted to nurses that I knew and were friends with. I want to make movies and write comic books, so we're totally opposite. But with one of these women, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were driving to a show to watch a band in another city, and on this hour-long drive, she turned sideways in the passenger seat, like her back was against the passenger door. Probably unsafe even though she was still wearing her seatbelt. And she just looked at me and listened to me while we were driving to this show. It was one of the best freaking interactions I've had with a woman because she just felt present in that moment. Went on a date last week and the woman never took her phone out of her purse. Super hot. If she doesn't take her phone out of her purse, how is she supposed to show you 300 pictures of her cat? How they treat themselves, self-care, how they treat others, friendship, how they work with others, collaboration, what they enjoy learning, curiosity, and what they enjoy doing, creativity. Intelligence, confidence, self-awareness, empathy, creativity, education. Also being pet-friendly is a big plus. So basically anything you'd like from a decent human being. Being emotionally intelligent and mature, which includes having kindness and empathy, etc., can go a long way as it shows me that you're capable of being a decent human being towards myself and others, and that you won't be someone that I have to be careful around. Bonus points if I get the vibe that you're a chill person. Enthusiasm, boundaries, responsible for herself, allows her to be challenged in her thinking, enough backbone to keep me honest when I'm wrong. Being self-sufficient. I don't want to date a dependent. When my wife and I were dating, one of the things that made her stand out was that she was totally self-sufficient. She didn't need help, nor did she expect it. We dated for almost 2 years before making the decision to move in together, and that was mostly on confluence of circumstances. She wanted to live on her own because it was freedom for her. Man, I feel that. My wife is completely self-sufficient. She's better educated and makes more than me. She does not need to be with me, but she is. And it feels great that someone who doesn't need me chooses to stay with me. Being with an independent woman is super hot because you know for the fact that she doesn't need you at all. So knowing that she is with you because she wants to be is super hot. Bit of a simple one here, but I love when a girl can sing. My wife claims that she can't carry a tune in a bucket, but when she sings, it's beautiful sounds to my ears. And I feel I have a responsibly good judgment on vocal quality. When we have a couple of drinks, I get my guitar out and can occasionally convince her to sing a few songs with me. It's one of my favorite things to do. The same traits I look for in my best friend. General vibes need to be on point, thoughtful, kind, sassy. I'm perfectly happy single, so my partner needs to add to my life and make sure our time together is more valuable than my time alone. If she's got a dark sense of humor, I like women like I like my chocolate Easter bunnies, dark, bitter, and with a gnarly hollowness inside that can never be filled. someone with equivalent levels of apathy and laziness, but about areas of life that complement my own apathy and laziness. That way, one of us will always let the freaking dog out or put the kettle on. But I don't feel too guilty for saying so for Saturday. I'm not getting dressed. Been married 16 years. Perfect. I'm not a guy, so I don't count. But I like when girls are genuinely kind and have good banter. Like, you can be cheeky and funny and a little sassy, but I still like a nice girl. I've always been attracted to those kind of girls in the room. I can agree with this. I like a woman that can get along with my male friends. Also my female friends, because if she can't, that's a red flag. But I don't want her to be one of the boys, like many guys say they want. I want her to be her own unique self. I want her to be the reason I don't want to be around my boys all the time. I saw a girl riding a fixed bike in the city and doing bunny hops with the bike at the intersection to stay upright. I had only just started riding my bike again, and I was just so impressed with the skills. Optimism. I'm a bit of a pessimist at times. I fall into nihilistic thinking a lot. Good to have someone who could look to our future with a positive light. Adventurous. Being willing to put yourself at risk of humiliation, danger, or failure when encountering new activities is attractive. I will say I definitely like an adventurous woman, or at least someone who wants to plan out and try new things. I often get lost in my work, and it's nice to have someone to invite you out to do things. When I dated my ex, the one thing that constantly made me fall in love with her was just her ability to just get excited to talk about anything. I loved seeing her just get excited about either the littlest thing or whatever was on her mind that day. Enthusiastic or interested in me. That is so reassuring to have. Also, for her to have some hobby or activity, whether it be tennis or an instrument or Dungeons and Dragons or theater. Something she's passionate about would be nice. If her principles and values are similar to mine, it's a way to minimize unnecessary discussions and keep harmony while enjoying each other's company. When she's not afraid to get her hands dirty, kill a bug or two, or unclog a toilet. I'd like to add, and she likes to wash her hands after. It's exhausting to be in a relationship with someone who constantly requires reassurance, praise, and affirmation. Know your worth, and if others don't recognize it, move on and find a relationship with people who do. I understand what you mean, but keep in mind that praise, affirmation, and reassurance is absolutely something that everybody needs and wants. I'm sure there's some experience behind your comment, but it's about finding a balance between knowing your worth and being with someone who empowers that understanding. For some people, their own worth is easier to understand with a bit of outside help. There are a lot of traits that I find attractive, but the one I absolutely love is bravery. And by bravery, I don't mean just doing outlandish things and acting foolish. By bravery, I mean brave enough to confront what's wrong, brave enough to acknowledge her mistakes or shortcomings, brave enough to take on challenges and negative situations head on. I will never date a girl without all of these. Number 1, friends. Number 2, well-defined interests or hobbies, preferably ones that involve more than just looking attractive. I'm talking even simple things like their own established favorite music, movies, etc. And number 3, something equating to a career or career goals. I don't care if it's school or working in customer service at an office or rising up the ranks at a retail store, but something with intent. And frankly, I think most of the things that other people are saying in this thread, things like confidence, intelligence, sense of humor, etc., are all easier to find in people who have these 3 things. They're basically just cornerstones of having an actual independent personality. Basically, I've dated far too many women whose entire personality, self-worth, and motivation are simply being a girlfriend. Sometimes I just feel like I like everyone. My standards are almost non-existent. If I spend more than a few hours every day for like 3 weeks with someone, I'm at risk at falling in love, because I don't do that crap for anybody. I had to address this same situation today, actually. I had to tell a girl that I'm friends with that I needed some distance because goddamn, we were talking a lot and I started catching feelings. Man, I don't like that. That's some scary crap right there. Girls who like sports, and not in the name the 1986 World Series champs. Just like to shoot hoops or play in the rec league or play pickleball with some friends and throw the football on the beach or something. That's hot. The ability to be one of the guys. I like a cute, pretty, pampered princess as far as the looks. I'll admit I'm a sucker for an innocent girly girl look, but I'd rather have someone I can take out on insane adventures and go do stupid crap like fireworks or play video games and swear at each other while we make hookup jokes. Just that comfortable personality where I don't have to impress her and I can just be me. I get the understanding with the be one of the guys things, but do you ever think these guys just want to date their guy friends? If a girl has a talent or a skill that took time and dedication and still interests them, it's incredibly attractive. Like if I'm not physically attracted to someone, then I find out that they play bass guitar or super into making pottery or something, they instantly become very attractive. Any girl who can calculate the homogeneous linear second order differential equation with the regular singular point would make me melt in a second order solution. The last 2 girls I dated had one major thing in common. The first, we were having a discussion, a friendly argument about philosophy, and she was holding her own. Then I said something, don't even remember what, and she said, "That's not even close to what the book says. You know, I have it right here. I can take it out and prove you wrong." I had a boner so hard that I had to look away and think about my grandma. The second, a jokingly silly argument, which I tend to be good at. She won, I had no rebuttal. I love girls who are smarter than me, and they have the balls to prove it. That's just so hot. As someone else said, critical thinking is fantastic, along with being secure with herself, emotionally stable and independent. I'm so over the fragile, clingy girl that worships me as a means of seeking validation. No, I'm not being cocky in saying that. Anyone who has been there knows it's less about me and more about the other party seeking what they're missing, and being discarded for the next shiny object that's likely to come. The ability to hold her ground in a debate and push back and not fold in conversation when her heart knows that she's right. A girl who has balls is hot. Hey, yo!
What disgusting secrets does your employer keep from its customers? The fajitas sizzle because we pour oil and water on a hot plate, not because we grilled anything. My whole life is a lie. Former employer was charging clients for a WAN backup solution that wasn't even running. I was still actively developing it when I quit. Client called up and asked to see the records of the backup. I said it wasn't running and that we didn't have any to my knowledge. Client flips out, calls boss. Boss flips out at me for not lying. Screw that noise. I used to work in a major movie theater and we would recycle hot dogs. Basically, if the links were on the spinning rack all day and didn't get purchased, they would be thrown in a bucket and refrozen. We poked a fork hole in one to see how long it would stay in rotation. 7 freaking days. Worked for a self-storage place in Rocklin, California. They made every customer sign a lease agreement that said that you wouldn't hold them responsible if your unit was broken into and things were stolen. I found out that we had 7 to 8 burglaries a year. The owners would get sued, but they would always get off because they produced the lease agreement in court and the judge would dismiss the case. One day, I came in from vacation to pick up my paycheck, and I found the owner and the manager loading up a truck with the contents from a unit that wasn't theirs. I went around the corner to an area where the fence allowed me to look in, and saw that they went to another storage space, cut off the lock, and proceeded to load up the truck with a telescope, big screen TV, and some power tools. I came back the next day and asked one of my coworkers. He told me that the owners of the storage space would sell the stuff they stole from renters, and that the manager and the owner did the same thing with another property that they owned in Granite Bay. I quit to go back to Sac State. I called the Rockland cops to tell them what the owners were doing, and they said that there was nothing they could do unless they were caught in the act. Tim Hortons Smile Cookies. Pay an extra $1 for a chocolate chunk cookie with a smile drawn on it. All proceeds go to local charity. Unfortunately, store owner would just go into the system, void all cookie sales, and replace them with regular chocolate chunk cookie sales. A small business owner for whom I worked several years ago kept deducting the employees' health insurance premiums but never sent the payments in to the carrier. After 2 to 3 months of this, our insurance was canceled right before one lady's teenage son was in a fairly serious car accident. She finds out at the emergency room, during what is of course an extremely stressful time, that she has no insurance whatsoever when she and her dependents have been fully covered. The next day she went into his office, very upset, to find out what happened. He gave his usual song and dance and made excuses for not having been able to send it in, and this normally mild-mannered lady picked up a stapler and threw it at him. He wasn't even injured. While doing that was, of course, unacceptable, I totally understood her frustration with this weasel. He spent thousands of dollars a month of company money, coding it to company expenses, at Sam's Club on groceries and big-ticket items for his house, on top of his already generous salary. Then to top it off, he actually took her to court for the stapler-throwing incident. After hearing the story, the judge dismissed the weasel's case and made a comment to the effect that if he were in the same position as her, he probably would have done the same thing. Used to sell cars at a major dealership. The unofficial sales contest was to see how much over MSRP they could sell the car for by confusing the customer on the price with payments and financing, manipulation of trade value, and sometimes outright fraud, like promising manufacturer rebates then not applying them. The winner, quote unquote, for the 2 months I was there was over by $10,000, selling a car that should have been about $20,000 for over $30,000. The sad part is, the customer might never even know because they still got the payment they wanted. Please do yourself a favor and don't shop solely based on payments, and if you are financing, then make sure you are aware what the final selling price of the car is. There is a major difference between $400 a month at 60 months at 0% interest and $400 per month at 84 months at 0.9%. I used to work at Frisch's as a hostess, busser, drive-thru attendant. That place was filthy and corrupt as heck. No one in the kitchen wore gloves, and the cooks loved making people eat old food or food that had been dropped on the disgusting floors. The manager loved to steal the waitress's tips and blame the customers or the sketchy-looking bussers. The most corrupt thing the awful manager did while I was there was around Christmas time. He would take $100 out of each of the new/younger employees' cash drawer, call your parents saying that their kids stole the money and they needed to be brought in to be questioned. When I went to work the next day, I found out the same crap happened to a few of the others. We all got angry and snagged the key that locked the box to the camera controls, rewinded to the following day, and watched until we saw the jerk start doing his thing. Every single one of us reported him. He got insta-fired. It was glorious. TLDR, Frisch's is gross and my old manager was a corrupt jerk. I worked for a vet in Vancouver and I ran a whole month of raffles, nail cuttings for donations, and pet pics with Santa for the SPCA. When we added up the last of the money from the month, I put it in the safe. The practice owner's wife deposited the money and bought herself some new Chanel makeup. What the frick? I quit in disgust. We have a roach problem, and gnats are everywhere. Customers can see the gnats flying around the salads, fruits, and pies we have out, but I guess it doesn't disgust them enough to not come back. More than a few times, customers have complained about bugs in their drinks that ended up there after they died in our ice machine. The worst was a live cockroach in someone's salad that was on the fork as they went to take a bite. Whole cooked turkey breasts and roast beefs have been dropped on the floor and served without any of the managers and employees giving two craps. I've realized most restaurants are so much more dirty than shown, but I've eaten out my whole life. I guess my consolation is that I'm probably building up some immunities to all the ickies out there. I used to work for a local children's charity where a good majority of the money was skimmed to pay for the owner's for-profit business. I worked for a popular national pet store chain. We told our customers that we got our puppies from, quote, reputable breeders and not puppy mills. We got them from puppy mills, and I can't express how many came in on the back of a large, pitch-dark freight truck, malnourished, scared, and sick. We also adopted the cute kittens from the local shelters and charged customers outrageous amounts of money, most of whom just felt bad for the kittens. Don't support national chain pet stores that sell puppies that do not come from local shelters, folks. If you want a dog or a cat, then please adopt. Or find a stray, take it to a vet and adopt him or her. Also, donate whatever you can to local shelters. Food, toys, beds, money, etc. They could really use it. I just want to say that if you have ever worked at a water park, it will turn you off of visiting any kind of public pool or park for the rest of your life. The things we pulled out of those filters, man. No. Just pour so many chemicals into the water that literally nothing can live in it and call it a day. Macy's doesn't donate anything to charities. They practically force their employees to and claim it as company donation. I worked at Dairy Queen. The collection box supporting children with cancer hanging out in the drive-thru window was a discontinued charity. My manager pocketed all the donations. Disgusting in a different sense. Back when I was a warehouse manager for a major office supply chain, one of my duties every month was to gather items from our inventory that were selected by corporate to be donated to local charities. All items would be collected, scanned, placed on pallets, and loaded onto the trucks to be delivered to the charity distribution center. After a few months, I started to notice that some of the donation items that should have been shipped out mysteriously ended up missing or being used in my general manager's office. I later discovered that on the days that the donation items were collected, my manager would send me out for lunch and revert the scans on whatever donation item he desired in order to keep it for himself. I eventually caught him in the act as I returned early from lunch, and needless to say, he was not able to come up with a good excuse. Instead, he insisted that I take my pick of whatever I wanted from the pallet. I was so disgusted that I immediately put in my 2 weeks notice during the busiest time of the year and filed a complaint with corporate. My last job, we held events and refilled premium liquor with house crap. And during events, charged consumption tabs with 100 plus people, extra shots and bottles that were never ordered so the event holder can pay for something never even used at the end of the night. And that's just scratching the surface. My boss refuses to hire anybody but white women, and he uses rubbing alcohol to wipe the expiration date off of product if it expires. He just puts it back on the shelf, including dairy product. I hate him. For reference, this was 9 years ago, so hopefully he's been fired at this point. This happened years ago, but I was a receptionist for a chiropractor for about 6 months. One day, our first appointment came in. I went in the back to look for him. I walked in on him screwing a coworker on the table, the same table the patients sometimes would lay face down on. I went back to the front and said, "He'll be with you in a couple minutes." God, I was disgusted. He was married with 2 young kids. I didn't work there long after that. Worked store security. There are peepholes above the ladies' changing rooms at several major retailers. Supposed to be for female security agents to monitor the dressing rooms, but we had no female security agents. Lots of creepy voyeurism / self-pleasure going on. Private company I no longer work for. The company list of vehicles included 2 4-wheelers, a Corvette, a Hummer 2, a brand new Jeep, and oh right, a 20-foot fishing boat. Also frequently bought company furniture which he would then sell to himself. Government contractor, and a weasel. Okay, this really took off and I'd like to clarify a few things. If you have a small business and your cars are company cars and your office is in your home, power to you. Starting a business takes a lot of work. The main problem that I had with this guy was his general selfish nature and lack of respect for anyone. I can't go into details, but there were 2 big projects going on at the company at the same time. One under the government was defense-based, the other, which was an invention that he held the patents for, was aerospace. He used every trick in the book to siphon the government contract money into the private project so that he could reap the benefits, generally treated employees like dirt, and was just such an unbelievable jerk. I recently worked for another government contractor and my boss there was nothing less than stellar. Using a throwaway. The company I worked for had to maintain a trust account where money owed to clients was kept and then they were paid out of it. There was a small lag of about 30 days between when the money came in and when it was sent to the client. This was a highly regulated industry. For more than 3 years, the company hadn't been paying their clients and had been fudging the books. I found this out when I was told to stop sending reports that showed clients were owed money. I pressed management and found out they had been lying to clients for well over 3 years. And one client was owed $1 million. I should also point out that in this particular industry, this client was in the top 3 in the nation. We're talking about thousands of companies owing tens of millions of dollars. I was instructed to lie to the clients until they were so fed up they threatened to sue the owners, then they would get paid. This was common knowledge in the business. It was openly discussed with customer service. Until I filed a formal complaint with the regulatory agency, none of the more than 100 employees had ever reported them. Not one. And I know why too. After I gave proof to the regulatory agency and quit, they swooped in and seized the company books. And all of my allegations were true. Instead of filing criminal charges against the executives involved, the regulatory agency just fined them and then made them pay back the missing money to the trust. No one was charged with the crime, no one lost their job, no one was put on probation. Absolutely nothing happened to those responsible, and the only consequence is that they have to have regular audits. Screw the government. I worked for a gelato shop that made us dig through the so-called recycling bins to fish out used plastic cups and spoons to wash and give to new customers. Even if the spoons had bite marks from other customers and were coated in chewing gum, we were told to wash them up and only had to throw them out if they were really unpresentable, because these things are expensive. Furthermore, all the other stuff in the recycling bin that people so good-heartedly placed there, yeah, all of it got thrown in the dumpster. Customers ate it up and told us regularly how glad they were that we were a green business who cares about the environment enough to recycle. It didn't take long before I just couldn't keep doing this with a clean conscience, and I turned them into the health inspectors, who were obviously horrified that this was happening. About 2 months later, I got laid off and the business closed its filthy doors forever. They leave sites like Reddit unblocked just to see who is slacking and fire them. One of the few benefits of performance-based jobs is that as long as you're getting your crap done, you can throw that right back into their faces. A few years ago, was working as a call center drone, and the boss of my boss sent me an email regarding the amount of non-work-related internet usage from my computer. I just sent him a metric spreadsheet showing that I was, by far, his most productive employee. Didn't even write anything in the email. Never heard anything else about it. I worked as a supervisor at a water park, and just before inspection by the owner, the director had me go around the park and paint all the rusted metal silver to look like new. Some of those bolts were nearly rusted through and were crucial to the ride's construction. Valet here. I've seen a number of occasions in which rubbing compound was used to cover up mild to moderate scratches. Coworkers have stolen things out of cars, from spare change to a handgun on one occasion. If valet is an option, don't do it. Just want to add, I've never stolen anything out of someone's car. Also, yes, all valet companies are different, just like not all restaurants spit in your food. I valeted my car one time. I thought, nah, they won't steal my stuff. Wrong. They stole lots of stuff. I used to work at Victoria's Secret. We are required to refund and take back any used underwear as well as everything else in the store. It would then immediately go back on the sales racks even if it had obviously been worn. I showed my manager a used pair of pink panties that had a disgusting smell that resembled tuna, and she advised me to just spray perfume on it. I didn't quit immediately because I needed the money. Instead, I would grab a pair of scissors from the back and accidentally cut the ones that I knew had been used, so they had to damage them out and not sell them. I work in designer clothing retail. The clothes are quite expensive, and the assistants are required to only wear full-price garments. So we, the whole team, just pick clothes off the rack, wear them all day, including lunch and bathroom breaks, and at the end of the shift, replace the tags and put the clothes back on the shelf for the customers to buy at full price. I know I was grossed out my first day there. If you come into Geek Squad with a computer under warranty, we are required to at least perform a $70 diagnostic on the computer before sending it out for repairs. If viruses are detected, that price goes up to $190 for the removal. I have had to remove viruses from a client's laptop and then send the laptop off to get the hard drive replaced. Also, $30 RAM installations are per stick of RAM. Seriously. One time our department was doing poorly in sales, so they brought in a specialist to give us an after-hours training session. He opened up with, if anyone is stupid enough to walk through those doors looking for a repair, they deserve to be charged $189 for it. I hated that place. In the store I work at, the warehouse is a complete fire hazard. The electrical boxes are screwed, and things get thrown on them all the time. In the way it's set up, if there was a fire, we'd be boned. There's wood by all the ceiling sprinklers, which would absorb most of the water, and pretty much all our fire extinguishers are several years past expiration. I'm highly considering calling a fire marshal. We can see you. I look after instant photo booths remotely. I see all your stupid faces, all of them, every day. I changed the name of a sushi roll from the Ultimate Roll to the Miami Heat Roll and raised the price to $17. Instantly became the best seller. That's not disgusting. That's marketing. Kudos. And this happens all the time. It's genius, not horrible. Take a look at what bars do. They'll have a special drink in which they have taken another drink and renamed it for double the price. After graduation, one of my roommates from undergrad went on to the University of Texas at Austin to do a master's degree in advertising. At first, he was super excited because the program there at UT was the best of its kind in the country, and he really liked Austin. However, by the end of it, he had totally changed his outlook on advertising and actually ended up going into a different industry. Apparently, his last semester there, the students in his program had to do an internship with a real company and help them come up with an advertising campaign. One of his friends at the program was really excited because he had gotten his internship with Jack Daniels. However, their view on advertising was completely shattered when his bosses at Jack Daniels literally told the guy to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and figure out what they would have to do to get those people drinking again. I once worked for a small retirement home that was owned by a church. I was the night watchman, and during the night, I could smell the odor of feces wafting down the halls. Everyone could. And the nurses at the nurse stations would typically wait until their mandatory rounds times to deal with it. So they basically let residents lay in their fecal matter. I'd say about 10% of nurses actually give a dang about the residents. All the other ones are just there to get paid. I will never go into a nursing home. Okay, as somebody who's worked in elder care for a while, let me explain. There is no such thing as truly great elder care in a retirement home. Unless you pay a crapload of money or go into a 24-hour facility in Thailand or the like, because there you get one-on-one care. There's decent care, where the patient's basic needs are met and they're cared for the best that the understaffed nurses can manage. And then there's awful care, where the old people are lucky if they get their diaper and urine bottles changed more than once a day. It's not possible to give people with dementia or impaired bodies all the time that is necessary when you're understaffed and underpaid and are barely able to rush through the important stuff that needs to be done. You've got women and men crapping themselves at least 3 times a day, and if you're really unlucky, it's the same person every time, and you run out of clothes for them to wear and stick them in a nightshirt, and that is, of course, the first day in 3 months that the relatives decide to visit and get angry because why is their mother, father, or uncle in bed before tea time? Which is all fine. It happens. You deal with it and move on. But every time you need to change somebody or clean somebody or help somebody to the toilet, it throws you back between 10 minutes and half an hour, and that's time that some other patient would have needed. And what you can't finish isn't picked up by your colleagues because they're equally behind. Because you're 5 people for 35 patients and they all need at least 3 hours of your time, which is 2.5 more hours than you can give them. If you're lucky, you gave everybody the right pills and the right food and the right kind of diaper so that they won't get open sores on their butt. And if you miss something ultra necessary, you better hope the next shift catches it. Because if not, it's you on the line, and the excuse Mrs. X pooped her pants and put her hands down her underwear and smeared it on the wall of the hallway and I had to do damage control is not going to fly with anybody. And let's not even get started on what happens when a medical emergency happens. Because instead of running to the MRSA infected patient who's been in hospital 3 times in the last 2 months and has been dying for even longer, you walk slower and are relieved when they're dead. Because now they won't have to slowly wither away in pain. I worked overnight dairy at Walmart for a few years after I moved. had 7 years total with the company, and hated every minute of it. So in the dairy, we often get returns, stuff that has been left out in the store, and it's our job to put it back up. No thought is given to how long these things have been left out. They're put into a cart and wheeled into the cooler. It doesn't matter if it's a gallon of milk that has been sitting out 5 minutes or 5 hours. It goes back into the cooler and probably back on the shelf. This is done in the name of expediency, which is what drives every policy at Walmart. Things don't get done right, they get done fast. So with milk, if a dairy employee finds it outside the cooler, it probably goes on a return pallet because we know better than to put room temperature milk back in the cooler, and the store gets a refund on milk we send back to the milk company. Not so with regular employees, who, as they are trained, put it in a basket, wheel it into a cooler, and hand it off to the next guy, who probably is getting crap from his manager to get this stuff back on the shelf. Eggs? Eggs come in with general freight. They don't do returns on eggs. Once again, if a dairy employee picks them up, they probably get ditched in the giant bin of milk, eggs, flour that sits outside the cooler and ferments and smells terrible, but at least it's a good 5 feet from the candy bins, so it's not like any cross-contamination is possible, and never see the shelf. However, same thing as the milk. It could be sitting out for a week. It'll get put on a cart and wheeled back to a cooler, and someone will yell at someone else until it gets put back on the shelf, because nobody likes getting yelled at. While working there, I came down with food poisoning on at least 3 occasions, none of which I was allowed to go home. I walked out on the 3rd after I puked in a mop bucket, told my manager about it, and then found out that mop water, which was probably a day old in the first place, was used to mop the cooler because nobody ever told the employee on duty to change the water. This is ignoring their terrible policies regarding how they treat employees in train management. Don't buy food at Walmart because it might be cheap, but you're getting what you pay for.
What hobby is an immediate red flag? Those people who post prank videos on social media. I know someone who does this and it's absolutely a red flag. Same goes for people who base their entire social media presence off getting views and likes. For some reason, I forgot these people exist in the wild. They shop, drive, and are just out and about. Scary stuff. I always assumed people who did this would be normal in real life, but the person who I know who does this type of thing does a lot of the obviously staged and gimmicky videos, which are super cringy. You might expect them to be attention seeking, but it's actually worse. It's more so that everything is an opportunity for content, and it's like a switch they cannot turn off. There is zero living in the moment. Not to mention major social climbing and obsessing over how many people with blue check marks follow them. Absolute clout chaser. Every person they met, they immediately ask for their Instagram handle because every person they meet is an opportunity to gain a follower. This person is entitled and only sees people for what they can get out of them or use them for. They're very manipulative and obsessed with their image. This using people mentality carried over to personal relationships. In my case, the person I knew was having a full-blown affair with someone they knew that was married, and said that they simply didn't care if they were being a bad person. We're not friends anymore. My husband's best friend from college is a YouTuber who has 800,000 subscribers. Used to be a really cool guy, but if it doesn't create content for him, it's not a priority. He bailed on our wedding last minute. He was supposed to be a groomsman to go do some stupid video with another famous YouTuber. Definitely a red flag. The constant drive for likes and subscribers is toxic and gross. We all graduated to college over a decade ago, and the dude still acts like he's 19 years old. It's kinda sad. At first, we really respected him for blazing his own trail and doing his own thing, and getting out of our hometown, but he's just like every other douchebag influencer on Instagram now. Well, this kinda hits close to home as someone who is a YouTuber. I will say, over the years, I have caught myself getting swooped up in the content life and chasing the numbers, but I don't think I've ever done it at the expense of someone else. I absolutely hate prank YouTubers and met plenty of clout chasing creators as well. These posts were completely accurate about a decent number of creators in this space. Posting everything, and I mean every single thing, on social media. Knew this one dude from work that did this crap all the time. It was annoying as hell. Unfriended him when I was scrolling through and saw that he posted a selfie of himself on the toilet and used the caption to say, "Poopin'." Animal fighting, dog fighting, bird fighting, using dogs to kill cattle, wanting to see an animal kill another animal at your own amusement, non-documentary of course, seems like a big red flag to me. What about roaming the world unsupervised as a preteen, capturing wild animals in small enclosures, accosting passerbys and demanding that they use their animals to fight your animals? Pikachu! Pikachu, I choose you! Wasting your time arguing with random people on the internet, especially if it's baiting. Well, I disagree. Stalking women and collecting their photos on a mural. That's oddly specific. Oh boy, this one guy, friend of a friend, wannabe photographer. Our friend in common approached me asking if I wanted to do a photo shoot with her. I agreed because I thought it would be fun, and I met him before in social settings. They weren't unclothed or anything, it was all very artsy and not sexy. One thing I found odd was that he asked to do a few headshots afterwards. They had nothing to do with the photos that we had been taking, but I didn't say anything. Fast forward a few months, and the guy and I got closer. Platonic, I was already dating my current partner. He invites me over to look at some footage that he recorded for a project I was doing. I got into his house, everything was normal for a bit. Well, we were talking about my project, and while doing so, he walked over to his kitchen, and I followed him absentmindedly while chatting. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. He had headshots of maybe 25 different girls taped to his fridge. Mine among them. Some had little marks made with markers. I recognized 2 of his exes and a girl I knew he had cheated on his last girlfriend with amongst one of the marks. He noticed I stopped and turned around. He didn't really say anything about it. I snatched my photo and my friend's off the fridge and left. Later, a guy that knew him confessed to me and my friend that the guy had essentially a hit list of girls he wanted to hook up with. He lived in a small town, so most of the girls he wanted got pictures taken by him. It's been a few years now, and from time to time I remember the dread I felt looking at those pictures, with him just standing a few feet away. I felt like I was in a horror movie. This sounds kind of like a setup for one of those stories where he ends up killing everyone that he hooked up with, and they end up finding that he has this box filled with little resealable bags where he puts locks of their hair, or like toenails or something. I don't have any friends that are creepy as that guy in this post, but this story did unlock a memory of mine from a time when a former friend of mine used my phone to search up a girl we met at our job. He ended up saving a bikini pic of this girl and sent it to himself. I would find this out later when my girlfriend at the time was using my phone, and while we were driving, she questioned why I had a bikini pic of a hot girl saved in my photos. As you might assume, this started a huge fight, and there was no way my girlfriend was going to believe my friend was the reason I had this photo. You still suck to this day, Dave. Saw this post yesterday about a guy that uses real mouse hearts and testicles to place them in clear resin cast of Lego men. I don't know what that is, but it's a red flag. Adopting too many kids or animals, especially when you can't afford them. One word, gambling. Casino dealer here, it's almost never a hobby. One of my peers who had a successful career in the medical industry started playing poker religiously a couple years ago, completely out of the blue. As soon as he wakes up, he starts gambling on multiple applications on his phone. He plays every evening, whether it's with friends or just random people. He started with no to low stakes and has worked his way up to higher and higher stake games. He used to be interested in live music, art, gaming, and he would hang out with friends when gambling wasn't involved. He had to move back in with his parents and stop buying herb, a 24/7 habit he had since he was 10 or 12. Not sure if that was related to his addiction of poker, but he won't say why he had to give up so much recently. But still, all he talks about now is when he's going to the casino next. From living in Vegas, I see a pattern of people having bad poker nights and then going to less skill-oriented games to make the money back. A $200 loss can become a $5,000 loss in a few minutes. I used to work at a slot machine casino. It's exactly how you said in that last sentence. Same guest would come every day and complain about the same damn thing. How much money they lost in the last couple of days. Granted, it is smaller amounts than $5,000, but the fact that they complained and still came back the next day was pretty alarming to me. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to interfere or suggest a break from the casino, unless they came to us or that we saw a crazy change in their behavior. Even worse, we weren't allowed to even talk to them much because our boss said that we were interfering with their stay. It's sad that something that's literally made to be fun is sometimes someone's only income or debt. You see people fade away spiritually and physically, and you can't do anything about it because the company wants money. Family vlogging. They completely violate children's privacy. Using kids to shore up your own online presence is not okay. There are parents that are pimping their kids on OnlyFans, Patreon, etc. I watched 2 videos the other day exposing people that can buy exclusive picture sets of several 8 to 14-year-old girls who are prominent on TikTok via parent-run accounts. They showed the metrics, and their viewers and buyers were like 75% male, between the ages of 23 to 47. Freaking insane. The pictures were blurred in the expose, of course, but the pictures were said to be sexy bikini pics of little tween and teen girls. Disgusting crap. As a person with a kid who didn't even really want kids even, it absolutely blows my mind how easily some people exploit their own children. Like, that is your baby. How screwed in the head do you have to be to put money over their privacy, safety, and dignity of your child? I don't even post regularly innocent family photos of my kid on social media. Outside of like sending direct snaps to my dad or uncle, I'm far too paranoid about the kind of people that might see them. Even though I'd like to think I'm not friends with anyone that would look at my daughter in a predatory way. Damn, that just makes me so freaking angry. When you have a kid, your entire purpose for the remainder of your life is raising them to be the best version of themselves they can be, and protecting them from evils of the world best you can, not sacrificing them to those evils to make a quick buck. Holy crap. Much like prank YouTubers, I've never really been a fan of family vloggers. I've seen a couple, even met Shay Carl once at a convention and he made a video for my sister. Some can be nice people, but I can't ever shake the feeling that there are so many people that want to see other people's kids. Like, scripted television is one thing, but reality TV and online videos that involve kids' daily lives is just weird to me. Collecting blood slides. My friend had one next to his table next to his AC unit. When I asked him about it, he gave me this weird smile and claimed it was for work. I've never had beers with him since. Surprise, mother. If a person is preoccupied with their social media and they don't actually live and communicate in the moment, it's fine if you can communicate about it and make arrangements, but I'm not dating a person in a 3-way relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. I would totally be fine with a person that has a heavy social media presence for work, but I would want to be able to set boundaries that work for both of us on it. Yeah, my sister-in-law talks about influencers as if they're her friends IRL. I can't have a conversation without her taking her phone out and showing me someone she followed before they got famous. It's exhausting and honestly awful to talk with her. Her husband, my brother, has suggested she see a counselor about it and believes she genuinely thinks in her head that she knows these people. That, my friends, is what we call textbook parasocial relationships. On a date, casually thinking, well, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? 4. What? There's 4 ways to skin a cat. Influencing. Back in 1990, we had them. They were called commercials, then infomercials, then the crap became ridiculous. It's such a disturbing phenomena. Was in line at a touristy ice cream shop near me and the line was probably 20 people deep. 3 women approached the counter and asked for samples of various kinds. It was their turn in line, so fine. Next thing you know, one whips out her cell phone and starts making a live video on how they just discovered this place. They spent the next 2 minutes sucking their samples off mini spoons for their fans. People were still waiting in line and we were just like, get out of the way. They never actually ordered anything. For me, these women epitomize idiocy of influencing. They never actually discover anything, but pretend they're the first person to experience things. It's so fake. Yeah, I hate these types of influencers because 1, they do come off as fake, but most importantly, 2, they ruin a lot of awesome places. Like, I don't like the idea of gatekeeping, but sometimes we should gatekeep certain places. And I don't just mean chill, delicious food spots. TikTok and Instagram have definitely ruined a bunch of cool nature spots because this location is a great place for your next photo shoot. Ugh. Someone reading a ton of philosophy can easily be a very good sign, or a massive red flag depending on what specifically they're reading so much of. Shrines to people. When I first met my now late significant other, my son wanted to be sure he wasn't a killer and protect me. We were literally neighbors, so one day we walked to his house and my son said, "Let me see you don't have any pictures of my mom with X's on them." He thought my son meant pictures of his exes. Nope, my kid just wanted to be sure that there was no shrine of me somewhere with my face crossed out with Sharpie markers. Running an MLM or being an admin, aka dictator, of a local area Facebook group. Dude, I'm one of the mods for our local Facebook gardening group. So much drama in what I thought was a peaceful, calming hobby. Yeah, I see a lot of dictators in a few groups I've been in, but I feel like it's probably due to how crappy the members of the group are, most of the time, rather than them actually wanting to be jerks. I have dated 2 horse girls in my life, and they both ended up very similarly. Arguing with strangers on the internet. Not like usual discussions or anything, just taunting people because you're bored. My mother does this, goes on Facebook pages specifically geared towards things she dislikes, messages them big, long, nasty grams, then blocks them before they can fight back. And yes, my mother is freaking exhausting. This post is funny because I actually made it a goal this year to stop engaging with ridiculous people on the internet. I still have conversations with people, but the moment name calling or belittling begins to happen, I'm out. My mute and block buttons are also used now because I don't care if it's a sign that the other person won the argument if I use it. If you feel validation from winning an argument online, that says more about you than it does me. So I have no problem letting people think that. Kid beauty pageants. I dated a girl in LA who had taken part in beauty pageants going back to when she was a kid. She had a good amount of success with it, and she was most certainly a looker. But man, she was completely crippled with anxiety. Those pageants freaking mess girls up that start young. There's that famous gif of that girl giving a mischievous double chin smile. She ended herself at the age of 16 pretty recently. Those insane pageant moms are living vicariously through their daughters, the way belligerent sports dads live vicariously through their sons at baseball games. Not that it's an excuse for their behavior, but I think the pageant moms and sports dads have massive insecurities about living up to the conventional standards of femininity and masculinity, or are in denial about their own internal insecurities. So they become obsessed with forcing their kids to live up to an ideal they couldn't obtain themselves. And a lot of those kids also aren't going to be able to either, or even want to live up to these incredibly specific standards of masculinity and femininity. I'm pretty sure beauty pageants for little girls and teens just simply shouldn't be a thing. I remember reading an article about a girl that won a beauty pageant, and then it was revealed that she made a spicy video so she would be able to pay for the cost of that pageant. I think they stripped her of the title, and I don't know what happened to her after that. Watching gore or sending gore videos to their friends. I had a roommate like this. He started watching all kinds of gore and pain Olympic videos. It gave him some sort of superiority complex since he became desensitized to gore, and he would always try to get me to watch those videos with him. Likely so I would be grossed out and he wouldn't, as some sort of alpha move or something. Fast forward a month and I found our other roommate lying in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor, barely conscious. Where was our super alpha Chad roommate at the time? He ran out of the room and slept at the neighbors, leaving me to keep our roommate awake while the paramedics showed up and eventually mop up all the blood too. The one roommate lived, and the last I heard, he's doing well. The other guy, he can go screw himself. I'd make a bet that that guy was an average Joe Rogan listener. What about lewd anime figures? I get liking anime, but when your room is full of jailbait anime girls in bathing suits and lewd poses, there's something that's not so chill going on there. Shopping at conventions with the "I have to be able to shamelessly walk into my parents' house with it" rule is surprisingly challenging. There's always so much fun when your previously G-rated, or so far PG-rated, fandom suddenly sprouts a niche offshoot which has a scantily clad anime girl as a central figure. Because you just know that if you ever mention the fandom to anyone ever again, they'll look it up and the first result will be one of those pictures. I used to live in Japan and we would semi-regularly end up at the mall for some food, break a bill, and get change. In Japan, the lowest paper note is about $10. So all the coins would go to ice cream, then with whatever I had left, I would take it to the arcade and try to win the lewdest, crudest anime waifu figure I could. One of my friends thought I actually wanted one and got me a Nami figure as a gift. I wasn't going to not display it, but it was hilarious to explain what the story was every time somebody new came to my house. I kind of want to give my 2 cents on this topic because there was a lot of people going back and forth in the comments on this one. For full transparency, I'm a weeb and I would totally buy one of those lewd figures because no joke, the quality and design of some of those things are insane. They just so happen to be lewd. But I do find it funny that people would consider it a red flag, but a house full of alcoholic paraphernalia, substance paraphernalia, or even weapons wouldn't get as questioned as much as lewd paraphernalia. But I will say, if like a majority of someone's collectibles are these figures and they're lolly based, then I'd say red flag. If their identity is surrounded by Disney, sorry, I said it. I had a cousin who engineered a massive split in the extended family by having her wedding at a Disney World in Florida. She expected everyone to fly there from around the country and stay at the resort itself. A bunch of the family members opted out entirely because of how expensive it was. She ended up feuding with even the family members that did show up but ended up staying at cheaper places in Orlando. I was fortunate enough to be too distant of a relative to even get an invite. I remember seeing an I Am the Jerk post where a bride and groom were both into Disney, so they convinced everyone to fly out to their wedding at Disney and then proceeded to not provide food or drinks for anyone. Instead, they paid like $3,000, it may have been more, I can't remember, to have a guy in a Mickey costume be at their wedding and force their guests to pay for the expensive food/drinks from nearby vendors out of pocket. They were rightly judged. I'd like to add that if a person's personality is centered around any one thing, it's a red flag. Gun bros, substance heads, car people, foodies. Basically, if all you can talk about is one subject and nothing else, that's totally a red flag. Crypto, NFTs, and listening to Andrew Tate. Adults who are really into experiencing child-oriented entertainment in public. The 40-something-year-old guy hanging around Chuck E. Cheese by himself. Not necessarily the odd bird who collects kids' toys, although that is a bit strange to me too. Okay, I'm feeling personally attacked from all the people coming after toys. First off, they're collectibles. But in all seriousness, I think people enjoy collecting things from their childhood or experiencing things from their childhood because it was a simpler time. Because let's be real, when you have to really look at the world and notice how everything is so messed up, it's nice to just go home to things that make you feel nice.
Ex-cons of Reddit. What's the worst thing that happened to you while doing your time? Serious replies only and some pretty messed up stuff ahead, so fair warning. Did 7 in Pennsylvania State Prison. Saw a guy who was accidentally cleared by psych to be in general population go out to yard to try to cut his own head off with the razor wire. It was morning yard, not a lot of people out, and he sprinted towards the fence as soon as he got out there. We all thought, oh crap, we've never seen someone try to get over these forests of razor wire, but then this guy turns around with his back right up against the fence, cops coming from 3 directions yelling into their radios, and he loops a circle of razor wire around his neck and starts sawing. A waterfall of blood. Cops froze, everyone froze. That was really unexpected. They told us he lived, but screw me if I know how. Since you're asking, it happened at SCI Somerset, down in the lower yard. Yes, most of the razor wire is up on top of the fence, but there's a single run about 8 feet up the face of the fence, maybe to just discourage you from testing out the rest of it. He found this one section in the corner of the yard where the fence makes a bend, where that run was sagging down enough he could reach up and grab it. I always thought the pain reflex of holding on to razor wire would have made him stop, but nope. The craziest part is that prison can be months and months of literally the same thing over and over, like everything's painted the same color, then that guy is over there trying to cut his head off. Oh wait, huh? Like that. And prison doctors suck so hard. Probably gave him ibuprofen and sent him on to the hospital. He did it because he was crazy. The first day I was assigned to a new unit after being sentenced, DUI 90 days. I got put in a 5-man cell. It wasn't my first time locked up and had been in the jail a few weeks, so I wasn't too nervous. The guys were cool to me all evening. All 4 had done time before in much worse prisons. They were all playing cards, and I didn't know the game, so I sat on my bunk reading. They started off saying weird, cryptic gay stuff, random stuff regarding Vaseline and who was cute on the block, etc. It ramps up over the course of an hour, then they start playing strip poker. Meanwhile, I've been hearing every word they say and studiously ignoring it. They got bored of being subtle and began saying awful stuff about screwing each other. I ignore everything, while secretly getting scared that they're going to do something to me. Eventually, all 4 got up shirtless, and they trapped me on my top bunk and started grabbing at me. I yelled, "What the heck?" And they collapsed in laughter and spent the next 48 hours telling everyone who'd listen. TLDR, new guy in 5-man cell, they pretend they're gonna gangbang me. I suppose seeing people getting taken advantage of all the time and then not caring was the worst. New guys coming in and getting ripped off on trades and stuff. People with social/developmental issues just getting their food taken from them. Also, the psychology of people without goals gets weird. What was worst was just becoming part of that world. There are so many people there that have their rights taken away from them on a regular basis and don't care anymore. They choose to place value on being able to make others fear them. They stop thinking about the world beyond the walls and just get all wrapped up in the weird culture of the place. There was a day I was feeling proud of myself because I was running around organizing contraband trades, setting up poker games, and owning things like hardcover books and the only dice in the place. In that moment of pride, I realized I started to lose my mind. It's honestly hard to remember the months in there because most of the time, nothing's freaking happening. Nothing. You've read until you can't stand it. You've slept all you can. You can't play cards because your cellie is sleeping. So you stare at the ceiling and wait. It's so weird to realize you're doing the equivalent of time out for months. You're not waiting for 5 minutes, not waiting for 5 hours. You're waiting for a day that is months away. Just waiting. TLDR, it's like being in a DMV with a bunch of idiots and your number isn't up until next January. A user reminded me of the other thing that was awful on the human psyche. You're not really a person in there. You might have people that care about you on the outside, but they're still living their lives. The guys you play cards with are just trying to pass time, just like you. The officers don't care. You're just another pain in their neck. You just wear the same linen pajamas every day and just exist. 12 months on the inside. Very first day in prison. Very first day. I was in line for supper and this big guy comes up behind me, squeezes my butt, and whispers in my ear, "Are your panties wet?" Scared crapless, I turned around and the guy jumped back and said in a friendly tone, "Oh, my mistake, mate. I thought you were someone else," and left the line. I still laugh about it to this day, but during the time, it messed with me. Actually, he was a big solid who did honestly mistake me for his boy. I did 3.5 years in Texas prisons. I believe that the worst story I can recall was my first full day in a state jail facility, used as a transition center for up to 2 years before one is sent to a real prison in Texas. A guy came up to me asking if I smoked cigarettes. I didn't, but thought, why not? So he told me to head to the gym when that time came later that afternoon. We went to the gym and fired up a cigarette while we walked around the basketball court. As we were walking around the court, we approached the universal gym machine where a variety of people were using the various pieces to work out. The guy who offered me the cigarette advised me to follow him to the other side of the basketball court and to stay away from the universal gym. A few minutes later, a guy sat down and leaned back to do some bench press when 4 guys grabbed him, one on each arm and one on each leg. 2 other guys pull out cans of chili, or refried beans as both were available, in socks and proceed to hammer the guy in the face. The guy at the bench press had his face completely caved in. All I could think was, what have I gotten myself into? I also recall one other time when I was at the pre-release facility at the Beto unit where a guy had his face cut up with a box cutter and his throat slit over $20. The guy who died even had about $40 worth of cigarettes on him when he died. I never had anything happen to me directly per se. There were a few fights I got into over various things, usually disrespect. Processing into LA County Jail just after the first showers. Everybody is lined up to proceed to the next stage of processing. We were told to leave our towels in a pile on the floor and step forward when your name is called. One Hispanic fellow was called but did not speak any English. He was still carrying his towel. The deputy commanded him to stop and leave his towel in the pile. He did not respond. One deputy used his taser on the dude while 2 others dropped knees on him. The guy was rolling on the floor screaming apologies in broken English and Spanish. The guy received 1 warning. A few of us tried asking other Hispanics to inform him of the rule before we got to the deputies, but no further effort was made. I realize this isn't the worst tale in this post, just goes to show that violence happens for totally silly reasons in jail/prison. Been in that shower line before. Nuts to butts, they scream at you. Smells like balls, sweat, and hangover. Worst imaginable place on earth. I remember I was housed in Old County, a dingy, cockroach-infested, overcrowded, dirty section of LA County. You could wait up to 5 days just for a bunk, just sleeping on a concrete floor, eating bologna sandwiches. No blankets, no pillow, nothing. Once my bunk was available, they took me upstairs with 10 other people in the gang module. The cells are tiny, built to fit 2 inmates that pack 6 to 7 guys in there. The 7th person has to sleep on the floor. You get showers every 2 days, so a lot of guys shower in the toilets. While we were in the holding area, I saw them take out a body wrapped in a set of bloody sheets with the bloodied bunk mat not far behind. Apparently he was a blood that was thrown into a cell with Crips. Freaking nuts. When I finally get to my cell, the gate slams shut behind me. 5 of the biggest, blackest dudes I've ever seen in my life. A huge graffiti piece on the cell said, "Rollin' 60s Crips." That's Compton for those of you that don't know. One of the gang members comes right to my face and asks, "What's your name, white boy? Is it Bubba? Ain't you all named Bubba?" I knew I was in for a wild ride. Luckily, things went pretty smooth. Minded my own business and didn't get anything sharp in my neck or blunt in my butt. Still one of the most insane places I've been in my life. Absolute mayhem. Did 4 years, 4 months in a prison in Colombia, South America. For most people that are sentenced to more than a year, prison becomes a vacuum cleaner that sucks up your savings, your marriage, and relationships. It is a really hard time for most. I was engaged at the time. She hung in there for about a year and we parted ways. For you, life screeches to a halt while life rolls along on the outside. One interesting thing that happens is that prison is like a filter that sorts out who your friends really are and who are your real friends. It goes the same with family. Prison is also hard on you psychologically. You have time, a lot of time, to think. For most people, being left alone with their thoughts can be stressing. One thing that would reduce any tough guy into a quivering coward was the word remisión, which is the term used when they transfer convicted inmates to other prisons around the country. No one wanted that. It wasn't a good thing. While I was there were riots, got tear gassed a bunch of times. One time, the big boss gave the order that every cell block barricade themselves, and one cell block took a couple of guards prisoner. This was on the news, and it was a big deal. They brought in the GRI, Group of Immediate Reaction, sort of a SWAT for prisons. These guys came seriously armed. When they ran in front of our cell block gate, all the guys ran into the cell block. Me and 2 other less experienced convicts stayed by the door watching, when one of them stood in front of the door and pointed his H&K MP5 at us. I don't know anything about guns, but the other inmates were calling it out. We put our arms in the air. The guy next to me starts screaming, "Don't shoot us, we are not armed." The other guys started praying, so I called out the same thing. "Please don't kill us." The GRI officers start yelling, "Shut up and pull your pants down." We do exactly that, and we took our shirts off for good measure. The guy tells us to get on our knees, hands on top of our heads. We're only in that position briefly because shots ring out from another cell block. The guy and some others run toward the gunfire, and me and 2 other guys run into the cell block. The first thing the prison does is cut off the power, phones, and electricity. We were on lockdown for 2 days. It was really intense, and I really thought we were done for. One night, everyone is in bed sleeping when suddenly someone starts screaming in pain. I thought that someone was getting killed. I was scared out of my mind because you have nowhere to run and nowhere to go. But I started hearing people getting up and talking. It turned out that a roach crawled into the guy's ear. After that, it was toilet paper in your ears when you go to sleep. One day, a young kid got caught stealing some old guy's disposable razor. The old man was begging the houseman not to hit the kid, but it was too late. Examples have to be made. We all had to stand by and watch this poor kid get beat like an animal afterwards. I wasn't the only one with tears in my eyes. Another terrible thing was on visiting days, we would all bunch up at the gate of the cell block waiting for our visits. You would see a new inmate receive his visit and most would break into heart-wrenching sobs. That was hard to watch, mostly because you remember the day it happened to you. Mothers, wives, brothers, sisters, they were all heartbroken and it was your fault. It just sucked. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't just one thing, it was many. Sorry for the long post. I saw a guy with swastika tattoos on his body befriend a flamboyantly gay black man platonically. Turned my whole world upside down. Actually, for all I know, it could have been a flamboyantly black gay man. Either way, it was sweet. While waiting in jail to go to the PDC, there were 5 guys from my block that liked making people fight. They made up stories and stole things, and then would act like your buddy and say they found your stuff in this guy's bunk. I was warned about this. They finally targeted me, and this guy twice my size. Luckily, he was warned too. They stole my deodorant, which is a prize where I was, and put it in his bunk. They told me where it was, and I acted mad. Then we all went to his cell. The big guy looked at me and said, "You stole from me. No one steals from me." I winked at him and began lightly slapping him. He laughed and slapped lightly back. We both were yelling. Everyone laughed and I got my deodorant back. The 5 dudes saw we knew what they were up to and moved on to other new inmates. Even though everything worked out, I was secretly crapping and wetting myself to oblivion in my mind. I'm glad there's at least one wholesome post to separate all the awfulness. Did 3 weeks in county for basically being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I had just turned 18 and had never been in trouble, not even in school. I was interrogated in a small room by a huge undercover agent with a stash who told me that they knew I was the ringleader and that he would make it his personal mission to see that I spent the rest of my life in jail. Did not know any details, so I said nothing. When I was put in a cell, my cellmate was a 6'2" bald Mexican gangster guy, and every night he would loudly pleasure himself while I clinched my thin bed sheets in fear of not sleeping until I knew for sure I no longer heard him. I was released for lack of evidence. Good times. I'm going to give you a family story. My cousin got into some cocaine and heroin problems shortly after his mother died. He did a robbery at knife point on a local shop where my brother now works. Anyway, he goes away for 10 years, serves 8, and was released 3 years ago. He has a wife and 2 kids and is doing really well, so happy ending. The story that comes to mind is during his 5th year, he is one of the longest serving members of the prison. Short stay prison in England with only a few people serving sentences over 2 years. Anyway, he gets a guy living next to his cell and starts chatting with him in the cafeteria. They become friends, and after about 3 months, people think nothing of it. But 3 months after he arrives, the inmates break into the back office of the prison and find everyone's records. They found out my cousin's mate has been transferred to this prison because his last prison found out he was a kitty fiddler and he was moved for his safety. My cousin gets told flat out while at dinner one day, "So-and-so, he's been done for kitty fiddling. Do something or you both get it from us. Fearing his safety, my cousin goes over and whacks the guy straight in the jaw with the tray, breaks his jaw and a couple of teeth. My cousin proves he was not sympathizing with the kitty fiddler and didn't get his head kicked in. Sent into solitary confinement for 2 weeks. This isn't something that happened to me, but it's something I observed while in. My life was uneventful in my time, which was only about 4 months, and only during nights because I had multiple releases. Anyway, our jail was divided into sides and floors. The higher up you were, the worse of an offender you were. 1L was the floor with the men with releases or protective custody. 1R was women. Up through 5R and L were serious violent offenders. 1L was 12 individual cells, about 5 by 8 feet, surrounded by a larger cage, one TV in the dead middle. Our floor got the new arrivals who mostly, myself included for the first 2 months, had to sleep on rubber mats in the floor. One day, a young black man whom I knew from childhood was moved onto our floor. He'd been in the system since about 12. He had finally been granted work release. The guards hated him. All the guards were white. They didn't pull any punches. This was the year 2000. He was about 19 at this time. The night they moved him in was uneventful. The next morning, his release was for 6 a.m. to be at work at a restaurant at 6:30. The overnight guard was a jerk who loved doing things like dropping our food or releasing us late or holding us for an extra inspection or whatever. That morning, he was too busy to let this inmate out until 9 a.m. Our only phone was collect, and he did, for whatever reason, turn it off that morning so none of us could use it. Kid finally gets out, his ride still waiting, and beats feet to work. They actually let him work till noon, at which point he came immediately back like he was supposed to, during which time they made him sit in the sally port for about 5 hours without food, water, or bathroom. So he gets in after dinner and goes back to his cell, pretty dejected but not being bad or disrespectful. The next morning, they do the same thing. He gets to work and the manager can't do much but fire him, so he comes straight back to work and calls his PO on the way, and she calls the jail to tell them that he won't need his release the next day. So he comes back on the floor and pretty much immediately gets on the phone with his lawyer and family trying to find a new job. Cue the big fat guard dog. She comes walking down the floor outside the second cage laughing, saying something like, "How was work, X?" To which he responds, "You know how it was." And she, I swear to God she says this, says something like, "Shoulda known a lazy N wouldn't go to work on time. Looks like you're going back upstairs with the rest of the monkeys." We're all kind of appalled that she'd say that, and we're all white dudes. So he says something like, "Don't you have anything better to do?" Which is of course what she was hoping for. "Lockdown," she says loudly, which is where we all go back to our cages or mats. We all abide. She gets on her walkie and says her close first left and locks us all in about 3 hours before normal time. He says something like, "You ain't gotta take it out on all these dudes. They didn't do nothing." And she says, "Shut up, inmate, on your knees." Now you have to remember that she's about 6 feet in front of him, and none of us can see because we're all in our cages. Only the cage next to him can see her really, because he's in the last cell. So she starts screaming at him, calling him names, making fun of him, nasty, nasty stuff. So he calls her a dog or something. She pulls out a can of bear spray and just hoses him down and the rest of us by proximity. Then she calls in the response team, which is just one dude and his dog, and they haul the kid out, not fighting, in cuffs and drag him away, leaving the rest of us to wheeze on pepper spray for the rest of the night. That was one story. I could tell you about the guy with the wheelchair or the littering guy or lots of stuff. Thanks everyone for your comments. I didn't expect this to get big. I feel like I've had a pretty wild life and I love talking about the crazy things I've done. 8-time felon Eagle Scout EMT with SAR dogs? Okay. I've worked in youth residential group homes, worked as a counselor, taught public school, had to restrain lots of folks, been stabbed by students, been deposed for very technical ADA-related issues in big lawsuits, and I'm happy to share about all of it because I think our stories could all be shared. For the record, I was originally charged with 28 felonies and something like 15 misdemeanors for breaking and entering. Effectively, the DA took every single unsolved B&E from the previous year and charged me with it. We couldn't afford the $10,000 my lawyer wanted to go to trial. That was after the $10,000 he charged just to represent me. So we took a plea bargain of 8 felonies and 3 groups, all B&E. I was supposed to receive 1 to 10 years in the state pen for each one, but the judge realized that things weren't what they seemed, and instead grouped the charges and sentenced me to 3 to 30, suspended it, and gave me 6 months in counting with releases for work, school, and community service. So I pretty much just spent the night in jail for 4 to 5 months. Really lucky and really not too bad. I won't say that I was innocent, but I also won't say that I was remotely guilty of what I was charged with or what I pled guilty to. My PO, that's another whole series of stories, decided that I was the poster child for reform and had me speak to her interns about recidivism and corrections, and then for an unknown reason decided I was bad and tried 3 times to revoke my probation, all unsuccessfully. I graduated with a 3.7 overall GPA in 2003. 8 months inside, and one instance always sticks out of my mind. I was running out of phone minutes and spending what precious time I had left talking to my child. We didn't get to talk as much as I liked, had unfortunately more important people to talk to. Lawyers, trying to find jobs for my release, etc. This jerk comes up. I need the phone. Hold on, man, I only got a couple minutes left. He takes the phone and slammed it into the crappy payphone holster and abruptly hung up on my daughter. Still breaks my heart because I cherish every minute I can have with her. I worked as a guard in a military prison for 4 years, and after reading the stories in here, I'm glad I didn't transition to federal corrections when I got out. The things I read about in here. I didn't see either, but my buddy witnessed 2 events. One where a guy in the labor yard took his shovel and full-on swung it into the side of a guy's face, shattered his jaw and dropped like a sack. He lived. After his surgeries were done, he was transferred to a different facility. Another guy was an MP who was the arresting officer of an inmate. When the MP was sent to the jail, I don't remember what he did, probably some possession charge. We had a few prior MPs in the jail. He didn't remember the guy at all, but the inmate broke his jaw with an elbow coming out of the shower one day. His wasn't so bad off as the first guy. He stayed for the rest of his sentence, but was kept in a different block than the other inmate. The head cook was pimping out her female cooks to the inmates. Their families would wire money to the head cook, who would then get that inmate assigned to kitchen duties so she could screw the female cooks. As a result of this, we had to man an extra guard to stay in the kitchen at all times. The head cook was sent to Leavenworth, and the 2 she was pimping out were dishonorably discharged from the army. Outside of that, the worst altercation I've seen was 2 inmates fighting in a block and knocking the TV over. 40 inmates in the block collectively went, "Oh crap, no." And once the fight was over, they were all asking us to check on the TV and hoping it still worked. Didn't give a crap about the 2 bloody idiots we took to segregation. That TV though, fortunately it did still work. Put it back on its stand and plugged it back in and came right back up. The place I was at was mostly pretty laid back. We had a saying, it's 365 days of boredom with 5 days of excitement. It's worse than the hot days of summer and around Christmas. Tempers flare and everyone is depressed. Oh, there was also a time where a female guard was doing a block check and walked into the shower, which wasn't on, and found an inmate laying along the wall, head and neck on the floor, back and legs up the wall, pleasuring himself because he was trying to eat his own emission. She wrote him up for that. Was freaking hilarious to read that report. One guy had a heart attack in the rec yard. One of the inmates we had was a ranger medic. He was there because his chute line got stuck jumping from a plane and he shattered his jaw. Seems like there's a trend. And when he recovered, he had permanent jaw pain. Since he was a medic, he kept writing his own narcotic prescriptions so he wouldn't have to see the doctor, which is a big no-no. So he was sent to jail for drug abuse. Anyway, when the inmate had a heart attack in the rec yard, we sent a newbie private to run up to Delta Block for this inmate because he was the only one the guards knew had any experience with this kind of stuff. When the paramedics arrived, he gave a full account to them of everything that was going on and very well could have saved that guy's life. I spent a short amount of time in a county jail. The first morning, they came and handed out those small cardboard cereal boxes that come in variety packs. I remember wolfing down the cereal as I hadn't eaten in a day or 2 and was starving. They then came back around and served the milk. I was angry.
Men of Reddit, what are some green flags on a first date? She listens sincerely and talks sincerely. When you find a common talking point and she genuinely adds to not only the conversation, but your view on said topic. Good conversation gets me going. My wife, who I've been with for 8 years, and I had an incredibly awkward first date for the first hour. There was physical attraction, but we were both awkward and shy. Conversation was so stale and forced that I texted a friend that it wasn't going well and I could meet in an hour. Until, for whatever reason, she asked me if I had a zombie apocalypse plan. And I did. So we nerded out together over that and other topics flowed in more naturally. We talked for 4 hours and walked from South Keys to Rideau Center in Ottawa, walking the entire 4 hours. One good shared topic can start something amazing. I have to 100% agree. A good conversation can make you a 10 in my book real quick. Looking back, the thing that should have been the biggest green flag about the woman I married was that she made just as much effort to see me as I did her. She texted me first, suggested hangout times, and came up with date ideas just as often as I did. I don't think I realized it back then, but I realize it now. When we were first dating, my wife was in law school and an hour-and-a-half drive from her house. One night a week, she would come to my house. She was temporarily living with her parents while she went to school as a single parent. We'd have a date night, she'd stay over, and she would get up at 4:30 a.m. and drive back. That was 10 years ago, and she still always makes me feel appreciated at that kind of level. I try to up my game and respond back at that same level, and I tell her that my goal in life is that she never realizes that I'm the one that got the better end of the deal when we got married. I love this, and I will say it is something that I definitely look out for when hanging out with people that I'm interested in. If I'm the one that's always making the plans or texting first, I will eventually become a ghost because I don't feel wanted. You don't realize that hours have passed while you're sitting and chatting. You sit in your car at the end of a night and talk for another hour, and realize even after one date you genuinely miss their company. Oh hell yes, this is one green flag. In fact, that's one of the things I love about my now wife. Every long drive, about 6 to 10 hours, we would have something to chat about, and as a result we would get so into our conversation that we missed our exits at least twice. At one point, we were heading to SoCal for a family event, and despite knowing the way by heart, we still managed to miss our junction exit because of our conversation. It was about K-pop and K-drama in case you were curious. Listening and reciprocating questions. I don't want to talk about myself the whole time. This isn't a job interview where I'm the employer. Ask questions about me too. Also, good manners go a long way. We accidentally showed up at the wrong restaurant. Well, I showed up at the north end of town and she showed up at the south end. She ended up coming to meet me halfway, and after dinner we talked at a park at a lake until 2 in the morning, and it felt like no time had passed. She wasn't on her phone at all. I told her that I don't kiss on the first date, just to make sure that it's not about a hookup. At the end of the night, as I was dropping her off at her car, she gave me a nervous smile and then kissed me. Then she gave me a hug and even texted me to see if I got home, as she ended up making it to her place before I got to mine. Anyways, we've been married 8 years now. I'm sorry, but I almost fell in love with your wife. That's so beautiful. Dude, girls making the first move is pretty hot, but the "did you get home safe?" that text is always wholesome. You feel comfortable talking. So simply put, yet often unattainable. She has a level of confidence, nothing crazy, but you can tell that she has an idea of what she wants. When she puts her phone away, hell of a green flag. After posting this, I saw a couple of comments come through about safety. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe for sure. I could have been a bit clearer in the original comment and said phone is silent and she leaves it on the table, or something like that. I wanted to get across that I'd prefer her to talk with me and not people on her phone. Ain't that the truth? I understand checking messages, but when you're on it for more than 5 minutes or so, at least excuse yourself and make a phone call if it's an emergency, or if you're not enjoying the date, just say so. It's sad that being present on a date is a green flag. Yeah, it is pretty sad. I feel you always see those comments about men having such a low bar to make women happy, but people don't realize it's the same for men. We are simple creatures. When she brings the 1977 to 2011 flag of Libya to the first date, big green flag. My daughter went on a date with this guy she met on a dating app. We were worried sick, making sure she texted us her location every time she went somewhere else. She got very sick on the date and he took her to the ER, waiting for her for almost 6 hours. When she went back, he wasn't allowed to go with her. So instead, he went and got her Waffle House since she had missed dinner. She still wasn't out after 6 hours, so he sat in his car with the heat on during the Georgia summer so that her food would stay hot. When she finally got out, he drove her home with her food because he wanted to make sure that she got some rest since she was sick. They made plans to go on another date when she was feeling better. They got married 3 months ago. We love him and I officiated the ceremony. Damn, give that guy a medal for sitting in a car with his heater on during the summer. She compliments you on how you look. Such a simple thing, and it goes super far. Conversation flows easily and naturally. You're able to talk about big things like religion, politics, and children without feeling like it's a potential argument. You're both laughing and relaxed the entire time, and you leave the date itching for the next one. I'm with someone really special right now, and I'm such a quirky, eccentric person, and the fact that I can just be myself around her has me feeling like it's safe to fall in love. Pray for me, bros. This one is really special, and I've never felt like this before. I really hope I don't screw this up. She showed up. Dude, this is my biggest fear after a rough breakup. I finally dug myself out of a funk and matched with this girl who lived 4 hours away. This is why I believe in destiny, because my settings were not that far and neither were hers. We agreed to meet at a town 2 hours away from both of us. So I drove the 2 hours to meet her. I sat in that park for about 15 minutes absolutely terrified she wouldn't show up. Things went great. We dated for a couple of months until her psycho ex went bat crap crazy and lured her back in by what I think was poisoning his kids that she used to take care of, and when she showed up, he messed her up pretty bad until she took him back. Yeah, that took a turn and I never heard from her after that when she went to meet him and he started texting me from her phone. Do I know if it's all true? Not really. But no one would move to another state to be with someone just to turn around and move back 2 weeks later. In conclusion, people suck. That story took a turn that I wasn't expecting because, well, the guy mentioned destiny at the start, so I figured they were going to be living happily ever after. Guess not. If you pay for a meal or anything and she says thank you and is genuinely appreciative, a shocking, and I mean shocking, amount of women won't even say thank you when you pay for stuff on a date. Bonus points if she offers to split the check, or I don't know, if you bought the movie tickets and she gets the popcorn. Example, my now wife offered to split the bill on our first date. I declined and paid. She thanked me, then when we got a drink at the bar after, she said, "Let me get this round." That's when I knew she was a keeper. I will say an odd green flag is when you offer to pay and she doesn't get mad. I once went out with a girl who legit got upset that I offered to pay because she was an independent woman and didn't need me. It was hella odd. Lots of laughter and smiles. You don't want the date to end. She asks you questions about your life instead of what you have and how much you earn. And she genuinely seems interested. She's honest even if it's to share the less desirable side of herself or nature. She asks questions about yourself. This is a big one. Worst thing in the world is to date a narcissist. I bought opera tickets once for me and a lady because we were both into that. It's very late when we were done, so I offer, and she accepts, a lunch date so we can talk about it. The date went fine, and then she paid for it. I was a bit surprised. I'm of the belief that unless arrangements are made beforehand, payment is done by those who offered the date. She said, "You paid for the opera tickets, and I had a great time then, and now I'm not about to get greedy." They listen and are actually interested in things you have to say. They talk too, obviously, and don't expect you to entertain them, but rather has a nice conversation back and forth. No obviously expectations on food, drinks, or pay for whatever you're doing. For me, it's a big green flag when you're adamant on separate checks for the first date, because it means that they are serious and not just out for a free meal, no matter how the date goes. Honesty about your intentions is also a really big green flag for me too. Knowing if someone is possibly in for something serious with you only, or dating around to find themselves. And potentially, eventually, a nice partner helps in setting expectations on both parts. And you might find yourself great friends instead, even if things don't click. For more quick green flags for what I find myself falling for in a date, like I did with my wife, I'd say instant attraction. It's important for both parts in an intimate relationship. Can't have a long-term romantic relationship without attraction. Unless you're asexual, of course. Another is having fun together. My wife is also my best friend. I still love hanging out with her after 8 years together. Intellectually compatibility. Equally smart, or in our case, equally stupid. We understand each other well, both in language and references. We argue and discuss things from similar points of understanding even when we disagree. To us, it's a cornerstone of our relationship because even when we get into fights, we can take a step back and reason to the point of understanding. We might still not agree, but at least we understand why. Similar core beliefs. Things like religion, how we look at people, how we consider kids, war, death, religion, and the meaning of life, money, career, family, etc. The big questions that shape how we go through life. They kind of need to be aligned for a long and healthy relationship. And if you find out early that they don't, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. Many people might disagree on this one, but I believe if you want a lasting relationship without one or both of you constantly having to censor/alter their views to avoid arguing, you need to have a similar core to begin with. I was sick with something, a lot of pollen where I'm from. We'd barely been talking a week on a dating website and I had mentioned my sore throat and runny nose. She asked me for my address. Being a dude, I thought nothing of it and I figured it was for a date coming up. I didn't have a car, so I figured she was trying to figure out how to pick me up since she didn't have one either. 2 hours later, I get a knock on the front door. A bag of assorted cough drops, tissues, cough medicine, just everything you could think of. Hot chocolate included. We had our first date the next day and boy was I sappy. I had the opposite of this happen before. Had just started dating this girl and one day she randomly came to my house in the morning. Was let in by my grandmother and I was like, what the freak are you doing here? It was so random and she definitely became a toxic ex. So maybe randomly showing up can be a red flag instead of a green one. If the person can win against me in Mario Kart. You see, girls always say they could beat me in Mario Kart as a flirt. but then they don't realize I'm deadly with the green shell and I will crush them. It can't be helped. My first date with the person I ended up marrying went like this. We met online, got to know each other a little, then agreed to meet after a while at a bar that they were familiar with. We sat, talked, had a few drinks, had some bar food, and got along like we knew each other for years. After the bar closed, we sat in their car. It was winter time. For another couple of hours and just BS'd with each other. I knew then I might have found someone special. My wife and I aren't drinkers. Our first date consisted of walking around a park for hours, talking easily about who we were. We left and I definitely wanted something romantic with her. She wanted to go for another hike with me. It took until the third date when she thought of me in the same romantic terms. The emphasis is conversation. Hookups at the very most can only take up about 30 minutes. Find someone you can talk to in life. It'll get better. My wife was 30 to 40 minutes late on our first date. It was the first time that we had ever met. She was very apologetic, and once she settled down from feeling bad about being late, she asked me questions no other gal ever had. Nothing crazy, but just questions genuinely interested in me. She has been the sweetest angel every day since too, and she also gave me 2 amazing daughters. Hard to explain, but her green flags were, and are, everywhere. Aside from punctuality. Text me when you get home. Love that. If they're polite to customer service people, it's usually a good sign that they'll be nice to you. Looks like pictures, helps carry the conversation, actually shares information about yourself, don't stick with the generic answers for whatever reason, doesn't interact with their phone, although I get it if I just came back from the bathroom, and be on time. Not on their phone, not talking about X, seems engaged in the conversation. Well, I've been on quite a few first and second dates in the last 3 years. Some were a ton of fun. Some really sucked. The ones that ended up going anywhere had most of these in common. On time, conversation flows easily, she asks questions and contributes. If we're having fun, going on a second location is a good sign. At the end of the date, if she leans in for a kiss or even asks you back to her place. She's got to be polite to the staff, and if you pay for the date, being thanked is nice. Also being straightforward about her date goals from the start. If she genuinely cares about how you're doing in life, if she makes effort to understand you as a person, and if she chooses to split the bill at the end of the date. Being a girl going through these comments. Really? These just feel like common decency. Dating must suck for guys. Speaking as a guy, one positive is we do fear SA a lot less than women have to. But on the downside, we are socially expected to carry the conversation, pick up the check, bear the burden of making the first move, and take a backseat to whatever is on the girl's phone at any given second. I'm an old widower, but for me, green flags were open honesty, vaguely similar thoughts on politics and religion, absolutely no facade stuff, and taking turns asking questions about each other and paying attention to each other's answers. We talked for a while and really hit it off and eventually planned to meet up at her place to hook up. When I got there, we ended up sitting on her couch and just talked and talked and talked. This was our first time meeting in person, and our planned hookup had nearly turned into 4 hours of wonderful conversation. Been together 5 years, married her back in September. Easily the best non-hookup I've ever had. Met a woman for the first date at a local mom and pop restaurant serving Polish food. We both got the variety plate. I can't eat beef and she can't eat pork. We had discussed this before meeting, so I gave her my beef and she gave me her pork. Now that's already pretty freaking cute, right? At one point, we were both talking and laughing, and I started having an asthma attack. It takes me a minute to find my inhaler, take a puff, and I start to come back from it. And just as my breath is coming back to normal, she says, "So I took your breath away, huh?" I laughed so hard I needed to hit the inhaler again. Gotta love a person with a quick wit. Wasn't a first date, but a hookup at a party. I was chatting to her and her friends when she asked me if she could kiss me. It was so odd, but she did it in a super cute way. I agreed, but I told her that I think it should be in private. She asked me what room was mine, as the party was at a hotel at the time. We ran up and met in the room. When in the room, I started joking about how random this was, and my quirky personality kinda slipped out. She just mirrored my energy. Every quirk, joke, stupid slip-up, and action just worked with her. It was like we always knew each other. 9 p.m. quickly turned into 5 a.m. I knew this was something special, and I could tell she felt the same way. We moved in together within 3 months and have been side by side for the last 16 years. The green flags was it just worked. My girlfriend farted? No shame. Simply said excuse me and we both laughed. I swear we sounded like the damn horn section when we're together. She's the best. She was just really genuine and honest, and was just as nervous as I was when we met. She also had brought me a small gift that she knew I would love. She was honest about her intentions and expectations in dating. But what really topped it off was how quickly we were able to laugh and be silly together. An ultimate green flag is that the conversation just flows naturally on both sides. I remember the first date. Though we did not call it a date to avoid being labeled, it was rather a meetup, with my significant other that I met on Tinder. We met up at a public coffee place, and the talk was just endless covering of a lot of topics. When we realized it was already getting dark, we still wanted to continue talking, and it was already a 3-hour conversation. By the time we both got back to our homes, it was 11 p.m., and I could not believe what had just happened. I'm horrible at reading people. Many years ago, I learned this little trick. You invite someone to do something in the future, but you leave out obvious details. If they ask you for those details, they're probably actually interested. Example, a group of us are going bowling next Thursday after work. Would you like to come? If she says yes, but doesn't ask what time exactly or which bowling alley, she isn't coming. I see what the poster is trying to imply here, but some people just expect you to let them know. Like me personally, if someone's like, yo, we're going bowling next Thursday, you wanna come? Then I would be like, cool, just let me know. Which means when you figure out the time and place, just let me know. Does your dog or cat like them? Animals see things we don't. I got the dog in the divorce. Years later, I went on a date with someone who ended up coming back to my place, and we stayed up talking until 3 or 4 a.m. I was sleeping in a hammock at the time and didn't own a bed, and also wasn't looking for a hookup, so my date slept on the couch. When I came out to the living room in the morning, my dog was sleeping on this guy's legs. Doggo had never come to bed, just stayed in the living room with my date. We celebrated 5 years this past January. We lost the dog a few years in, but my cat sleeps near my partner almost every single night. Open body language. This shows if they're actually interested in you and genuinely like you. If their body is pointing towards you and their arms aren't crossed, but also pointing in your direction, it shows that she's comfortable with being around you and probably likes you. If they cross their arms and their body isn't pointing towards you, or if you are sitting beside them on a bench and she puts her legs up on whatever side you are sitting on, this means she doesn't feel comfortable with you yet and probably doesn't like you. Talking about big things like politics, religion, kids, marriage. When I got out of my last relationship, I screened dates. I'm old enough to know what I want, and I wasn't going to waste my time dating someone who didn't match up. Also asking about STD testings. Shows me he is responsible and selective about who he sleeps with. I get one done every 6 months anyways, so I'm happy to compare results with him. We're married now, and our first anniversary is next week. To be honest, asking somebody about STD screenings I think is a positive green flag. I think if you're willing to do that for a possible relationship, I think it shows a lot about your character.
What's the most legendary thing that happened at your school? My school was on a hill and the tallest building in the area. During Fleet Week, the Blue Angels flew what must have been 100 to 200 feet above it, shattered like 30 windows on the top floor of the school. I attended a high school called Rampart that, despite being a blue ribbon school, had serious budget issues. The budget problems got so bad that the principal started renting out the school gym to anyone willing to pay up to use it. Some guy rented the gym out for a Saturday night, saying he was going to hold a church dance. Instead, he held a rave that got so out of hand it destroyed the gym. The incident quickly grew into legend amongst the students. Many claimed to have been there or to have known the guy who threw the rave. We weren't able to use the gym for the rest of the year. They kept the doors locked, but there were constant attempts to force them open so we could see the damage. It didn't take long for the students to start referring to the school as Rave Part, and whenever we had to sing the national anthem, we would finish it in the home of the rave. The next year, we had a new principal too, but we never knew if the old principal was fired because of the rave incident. 2 teachers screwing in an empty class. They thought they had locked the door. A student caught them. They were both fired. We have a school news channel that sometimes did live segments about new stuff going on. This was every morning in homeroom. One morning, they were doing a walkthrough of the new part of the school just built. They walk into a staircase and some girl is sitting on some kid's face on the floor. This is at 8 a.m. and the entire school saw it. Some dude in English class sat next to the electrical outlet, so he decided to grab the kid next to him and stick a piece of metal into the outlet. Shocked the heck out of both of them. They were both fairly okay, but almost scared the teacher to death. Also, there was the time a girl screwed 2 dudes in the auditorium during a basketball game and it was caught in the school camera. Her family ended up sending her somewhere else after that. This happened at my school in the UK around 2002. We had an indoor swimming pool at my school that was always really cold, and one particularly freezing December day, a bunch of us decided that we really didn't fancy having to do swimming for PE, so we dared this kid called Todd, who was pretty crazy, to crap in the pool. He said he would do it for 10 pounds. We had a quick whip round and managed to get the money pretty quick between us. To avoid getting caught, he decided to crap into the pool from the roof through a skylight. A lot of the buildings in our school had staircases on the outside, so it didn't take much effort for a couple of us to give him a leg up onto the roof. Once he was up there, we ran back down to the pool and looked through the windows. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes, we saw 2 or 3 of Todd's crap apples drop into the perfectly still pool, causing a gentle, disgusting, but oddly beautiful ripple. There was no PE for us that day. There was a huge sexting scandal where a handful of girls' images were being sent around. Well, when the school caught wind of it, they did the only thing a school could do. They held an assembly. Girls in the auditorium and boys in the gym. After an hour or so of, "you shouldn't do that," they had the district attorney come in to talk about the legality of underage sexting. One of the seniors stood up and asked him if it was legal if they were over 18. He said yes, and the entire place went nuts. Everyone was cheering, clapping, and laughing. The principal walked over to the mic and said, "Who asked that?" The guy stood up again and triumphantly said, "Zen Master Steve!" The audience once again erupted into cheers as he got called into the principal's office. I watched a friend sneeze and hit their head off a desk so hard that they gave themselves a concussion. There's a tradition here in Australia that the year 12s, final year of high school, usually have a day called Muck Up Day, where they play pranks or whatever in the school. Well, one year, the year 12s decided to screw with the whole school and placed roadwork signs and cones on one of the main roads next to the school. They diverted all that traffic through the school, essentially screwing up a lot of people's days. It is the best thing anyone has done on Muck Up Day at our school. At the school where I used to teach, the students told me that years ago, someone swapped the science teacher's Bill Nye video with the hardcore adult tape. According to legend, the teacher didn't notice for quite a while, and the students watched several minutes of smut that day. I told my class that it was a stupid rumor, and I'm sure that never happened. When class was over, one of my students walked up and said, "Mister, it's true. My brother was the one who switched that tape." Went to a boarding school, so several screw tapes and photos got leaked. This was 2004 to 2006, so before iPhones and whatnot. This mainly happened due to a program called MyTunes, where you could share your iTunes and movie libraries on the network. So people would accidentally drop their videos and photos into the folder that was shared without realizing it, and people bored looking for new music or whatever would stumble upon it. Once the administration found out about a video and the student was 18, allegedly, he had to watch the video with the president of the school in his office in order to determine that it didn't happen on campus and that both participants were of age. Didn't get in trouble at all. I mean, glad that he didn't get in trouble, but could you imagine the awkwardness of having to sit in an office with a supervisor watching your own screw tape? I took an A+ course in high school. We had an all-right sized lab room for stripping computers and another room full of computers for other worker lessons. There were a few stuffed animals in the lesson room as a half-hearted attempt by my teacher to decorate. Those come into play later. My teacher kept finding certain history on one of the computers. It was always horribly spelled or incoherent searches, and she assumed it was a freshman being smart to impress his friends during a different class. One day she gets fed up with it and makes a special project for us nerds in her A+ course. She gave us one of the lab computers and the smallest cam she could find and asked us to make a hidden camera. We complied and made a decent one and brought it into the other room, set it to record with more than enough hard drive space and aimed it at the perp's pewter. The next day, we fire up the vid and see one of the seniors coming in before school starts, Googling some videos and giving himself the old wax job. He cleaned up with one of the stuffed animals and went about his business. She threw out the stuffed animals and the cops got involved. Kid got into trouble but went into the army after high school, so maybe it all worked out in the end. Sorry, the stuffed animal? It didn't do anything! Why that? Why Teddy? My junior year, the seniors put hay everywhere inside the freaking English building, where it basically looked like a farm. One of the admins wasn't even letting people look at the mess inside. Also, when I was in 2nd grade, my school was supposed to have a fire drill, so for some reason the alarm wasn't going off. The lunch ladies decided it would be a good idea to set something in the kitchen on fire to make the alarm go off. They burned a good majority of the lunch that was supposed to be served that day. My high school was a bit on the sketchy side. During my sophomore year, there was a fire, and despite all the fire drills we'd been doing since kindergarten, no one really knew what to do. Some students made their way 10 blocks away to a Wendy's and a Waldbaum's, where they proceeded to rob both. At the end of my junior year, this sophomore threw his freshman girlfriend through a display case. She ended up with 13 stitches, and he got a lovely pair of handcuffs. In my senior year, we got a new principal because the old one quit at the end of the year prior. Anyway, this was the year the 5th Harry Potter book came out, and even before the school year started, people were calling her Umbridge because of her reputation at her last school. Most of us thought she couldn't be that bad. Then we met her. She really was awful. To make matters worse, she was racist to boot. One of the black teachers didn't agree with her teaching style, so she fired his lazy butt, in her words. Within a week, the NAACP was at the school. Before she finally resigned, there was a student walkout and people started throwing cafeteria fruit at her whenever they saw her. We were all glad to be rid of her. When I was in grade 9, I was sitting in the computer lab working during the communications class. All of a sudden, we hear this loud revving getting louder and louder, something passing by very quickly then fading away. Our teacher ran out of the room after it, and crike, I had no idea the man could move that quickly. I was in crutches due to a sports injury, so I had to hobble out behind the rest of the class as we tried to find out what was going on. Apparently, one of the seniors brought an ATV to school and drove through the halls. What was legendary was that he somehow was never caught. This was in Canada in the early 2000s. There's a video floating somewhere on Facebook, which probably means it's lost forever. Pretty crappy since it was literally one of the early digital cameras taped onto the guy's helmet. If I remember correctly, they let him in through an unused auto classroom's side door and he rode out the back. The area was very rural, so he probably drove it in instead of in the back of a pickup. Most likely rode it straight home too, so yeah, no proof at the end of it. A guy from my high school thought it would be a great idea to streak through the halls on the last day of school. After running around buck naked, people who witnessed it began whispering about some guy streaking. Pretty soon, the entire school was talking about this unknown mystery guy who ran around with his willy out. Biology teacher witnessed it and said, maybe it's just chilly today, but he isn't very well endowed. Soon after, he went to the front office and turned himself in. He apparently walked into a room full of administrators, all women, and just said, "It was me." They all busted out laughing and said, "Just don't do it again, okay?" Low blow from the bio teacher. Viewers, it is time for me to regale you with the story of Jeff. Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop, 8x8 dumpster. Twice a week at our school, the junior and senior guys were on garbage recycling duty after lunch. We'd gather all the garbage bags and recycling from the classrooms and offices. The building was a school attached to a church with offices and a sort of community center. It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We'd take out all the garbage and trash out to the dumpster, which was set next to some sheds behind the building. That's how it all started. Jeff jumping off a 10 to 12 foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else rolled it back when the garbage was collected. One day, Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30 foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree. That was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlocked trapdoor on the 3rd floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot sloped sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up at the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched him jump. Our school has a huge statue of a Mustang at the front because our mascot is a Mustang, naturally. It's about 40 feet up above the entryway, so everyone sees it. One morning, there was a bright pink adult toy on it because Mustangs are male and our huge statue was neutered. It took them a while to get it off of there because they didn't want to ruin the statue or leave any piece of the evidence behind, and it was too heavy to remove from its place, so there it stayed with a banner hung across the entryway blocking the statue. Nobody knows who did it except for the masterminds of the crime. For information, the school was in southwest Pennsylvania.
Ha! Took him a while to get it off!
My first day of high school. I was starting at a whole new neighborhood from moving and knew no one, so I kept to myself. I didn't handle crowds all too well, but I mustered the courage to get out of bed and get ready for school. I ran downstairs and talked to my dad about what I expected to get out of the day and ate breakfast. I walked out to the corner to catch the school bus, and that was awful. Nowhere to sit as everyone felt they each had their own dang seat. Story short, I made it to school. As soon as we made it to the school, I started walking to my locker. There were so many people, I was about to lose my mind, and I asked myself if it could get any worse. It did. A girl bumped me from behind to get ahead to catch up with someone. In one swift action, she ripped off her backpack and unzipped it to pull out a kitchen knife to stab the girl directly in front of me right in the back. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy. I turned around and walked straight home. I lived about 10 miles away. I just kept walking. I never looked back. I just wanted to make it home, crawl upstairs, and sleep in. One hot day in June, when I was in 6th or 7th grade, there was basically a riot at our school. Pretty much every kid in the school at lunch recess gathered at the office entrance to the school and started chanting, "It's too hot! We want to go home!" It was pretty incredible. A teacher at one point came out and said, "We're calling the police," to no avail. Finally, the bell rang, and everyone cheered and went inside. No one I've talked to remembers this event. A student accidentally butt-dialed his mother while the class was watching Platoon. The SWAT team showed up. Apparently, some of the guys a few years ahead of me got into the principal's car, took off the brakes, and pushed it up a makeshift ramp to the roof of the shed. I don't know how we got it down. The guys in my year managed to swipe the vice principal's smoking pipe. They put up ransom posters everywhere. In another class, they managed to get into the ceiling tiles and plug socket, so they took an old phone with a dirty ringtone and a charger and left it up there. For whatever reason, because of acoustics, the sounds seemed to shift around the room as you walked. The number got passed around so people could call whenever they needed to disrupt the class for a while. 853 missed calls, 2 missed SMS messages. Seems like every couple months you practice fire drills, and one day the alarm goes off. We start making our way down the stairwell and there's smoke. I get outside and say to somebody, "Wow, they make these fire drills so realistic, smoke and everything." The reply I got back was, "The school really is on fire." So, yeah, my school caught on fire. That was legendary. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. Somebody! Kid gets yelled at, runs out of the school into the woods. Helicopters come and search for hours for the kid. School goes on lockdown. SWAT team finds him a mile away eating Snickers in the woods. Comes back next week like nothing happened. I saw the whole thing out the window. Very crazy. Happened last month. For 5 consecutive Halloweens in a row, someone managed to set off a smoke bomb in one of the stairwells, causing the school to have to be let out early. They do it just after lunch, after most everyone had just entered their first afternoon class. It was amazing. Like, heck yeah, getting to go home 2 hours early on Halloween. A massive Roman candle fight involving about 50 kids in the middle of the field on Halloween night. Every Easter, our religious education teacher bolted a big wooden cross onto the wall and people could volunteer to go on the cross. You stood on a little platform and there were leather straps to hold your hands in place. He said that if anyone stayed on for longer than 5 minutes, he'd pay them £5, but nobody ever managed it. This was 6 years ago. 2 years ago, the app Yik Yak was growing in popularity at my school. Maybe about 25% of the student population had it, but since it's anonymous, people just started roasting other people through it. Just as people were no longer using Yik Yak, our craphead principal heard about people roasting other people. He made an announcement talking about Yik Yak and digital citizenship. Naturally, everyone re-downloaded the app, and anybody who didn't previously have it downloaded it as well. Word quickly got out that some teachers got Yik Yak as well and were monitoring it. People started to post stuff like "fight in the art hallway" and laugh as a group of 3 teachers would speed walk by then towards the art hallway, only to find out there was no fight and see the next post "fight in the cafeteria." This went on for 45 minutes until people moved on to better pranks. "I'm pulling the fire alarm next period." Our craphead principal misread this as firearm and called a lockdown on the school which lasted for 80 minutes and there were cop cases all around the school. Later that night, my school was on the news and Yik Yak is now blocked within 100 meters of any school in my school board. TLDR, my school got Yik Yak banned in my entire school board. Maybe it wasn't just my school board, maybe it's all of Canada or something. I'm really not too sure. I went to a professional training high school. We had to choose a major for our senior year, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would spend the entire day in classes involving our chosen major. Strange, yeah, only lasted for a few years. Now it's just a regular magnet school. Whatever, here's my story. My tech teacher was cool as heck. He'd give us a project on Tuesday morning, and we'd have until Thursday afternoon to turn it in. If we were done early, have fun on the internet. If late, well, that's a strike on your grade. Most of the students busted their butt on projects on Tuesdays, so we could watch Jerry Springer on the TV cart in the back of the room on Thursdays. Me and 2 other kids would play Warcraft 2 on the network computers we set up. Seriously, this teacher didn't give a crap as long as our work was done. One Thursday, one of the students in my class was flipping around the in-service channels the school had. Sometimes they would play a movie on it for some class. Guess what? Adult films. Hardcore black-on-black adult films. Student quickly turned it down and turned the TV from the line of view of the teacher. Teacher still heard it. He came over, coffee cup in hand, looked at the class, looked at the TV that wasn't turned off in time, looked back at the class, took a sip. "First off, if anyone offended? No? Keep it low. If someone comes in, turn it off." I hope that teacher is living their best life. A guy drove through the school on a dirt bike. He was doing wheelies and dodging the supervisors who couldn't catch up to the dirt bike on their golf carts. Then, later that day, he posted the video he recorded of the whole thing from a GoPro on Twitter. He was a legend. I was in an all-boys high school, and this is just one of the many pranks and stuff we did. This happened a few years before I was in the school, but one guy decided to get back at one of the old crappy teachers we had whose class was on the second floor. He decided to purposefully not do his homework to get in trouble as to set the plan in motion. She was also constantly picking on him, and that day he started crying, fake obviously, and saying he can't take it anymore, etc. He then proceeded to jump out of the window onto a high jump mattress that was placed underneath the window by his friends. Before the teacher could look out of the window, they removed it, and he went to lie down on the ground in a manner which resembled a mangled body. The teacher freaked out, went to fetch the principal and nurse, etc., and before they got up there, he got up and went back to class and sat down at his seat as if nothing happened. Teacher was speechless. Like I said, this happened a few years before I was in the school, so I didn't really hear about the aftermath of their shenanigans. It's also possible that it never happened, and that it's an urban legend going around. In high school, we weren't allowed to wear costumes for Halloween. My senior year, a giant group of us, about a good half or 3/4 of the class, decided that we were going to dress up anyway and meet in the parking lot before school to march in together. I spent the night before making my costume, which was a suit of armor made out of cardboard with metallic tape, a sword made the same way, and one of those broomstick horses. The next day, we all gathered like we had said and marched in together. It was hilarious, but I guess they found out, so the deans and assistant deans were waiting for us in the cafeteria to take our IDs so we could report to detention. One of my friends had dressed up as an ATM that he made out of cardboard. When they asked him for his ID, he was ready and slipped it out of a slot like a debit card. The best part was at the end of the day when we all gathered for detention. They didn't have enough room for us and all the other people that were there for other reasons. Out of frustration, they decided to make our detentions Saturday ones and spread them out. It was totally worth it though. Strap in, this one's a long one. At our school in the UK, on the year 11's final day of the year, they would do Egg and Flour Day, essentially pelting the lower years with eggs and flour. This was a long-standing tradition at my school and went back decades. As you can imagine, with parents understandably annoyed at the sight of the kids coming home covered in mess, the school received a lot of complaints. Because of this, the school clamped down on it in the past 2 to 3 years with huge punishments for those caught taking part. To get around this, the year 11s typically moved the location to somewhere off grounds where students could be ambushed on the way home, typically the local shops. Anyway, it was our turn. We were the year 11s now. We wanted to make our mark. A group of around 10 or so of us got together towards the end of the year and started brainstorming. It took us about a week to come up with it, and it was perfect. Or so we thought. Here was the plan. The school was recently going through some renovations, so a few things were moved around and a few areas were off limits, including one of the fields. Now, this field was where we would go in the event of a fire drill. Because of this, the fire drill point was moved to the tennis courts. Great. Why was this great? Because the tennis courts bordered on the local woods. The very edge of these woods were bordered by incredibly dense growth that was very difficult to see anything through. Between the growth and the tennis courts was a 10-foot fence, and just behind the growth was a pathway. Perfect. So the plan was set. We'll send a guy inside, get him to pull the fire alarm, then send a barrage of eggy flour death to the unsuspecting lower year peasants beyond the fence. Skip forward to the day of the event. We sent Tim in to be the man on the inside. We were ready and waiting in the woods, armed to the teeth with pancake ingredients. We waited a long time. It must have been an hour and a half at that point. We'll come back to this later. This was before mobile phones, so we had no contact with the man on the inside. An oversight. We sent in Christian to find out what was going on. And we waited. Not long this time, 20 minutes later, the bell went off. It was happening. First, we could only hear the piercing ring of the bell. A minute later, the loud chatter of many prepubescent voices. It got louder and louder. The tennis court was filling up. Students were getting into their lines. We waited for the perfect moment to strike. A few more minutes later, things quietened down. We started to hear the teachers shooting out names, going through their registers. This was it. Time to strike. With the students now silent, it was time to unsilence them. Without saying a word, we unleashed. Cartons of eggs were emptied into the air, over the fence and down onto the underlings into the most satisfying crack splats. Flour baggies were spilt and tossed over, leaving trails of white smoke before landing with a puff and filling up the area with clouds of potential biscuit. The screams, oh, they were glorious. The complete sound of chaos. It started with silence, shock as to what was going on. Then the fear set in. Nobody wanted to be egged. The tennis courts exploded into a mass of running kids, dodging yolk, trying to get out of the way. Teachers trying to find out what was going on, barking orders and trying to calm everyone down to little success. And that was it. Within 60 seconds, we had exhausted our ammo and it was time to retreat. Laughing hysterically and celebrating our accomplishment, we melted back into the woods and fell back to our meeting point. It was done. We were legends. Now let's fast forward a week. Remember Tim, the guy on the inside who took too long pulling the alarm? Turns out he didn't pull the alarm because we noticed they were all covered by CCTV. Another oversight. When Christian went in, he didn't bother looking and pulled the first alarm he came across. He was called into the school a few days later and ordered to give a list of names. It was either he did or prom would be canceled that year. Can't blame him really. I probably would have done the same thing. Those who were on the list, the choice was either 8 hours community service in the school or be barred from prom. We all took the service and spent the day with the school caretaker doing absolutely nothing. It was great. 10 out of 10 would egg again.
What is the dumbest thing you got punished for in school? Flip the monitor screen upside down, Control plus Alt plus arrow key. Got banned from using any school computer for the rest of the year. I did this by mistake once, and I told my friend about it. After I left, he decided to flip the screen and leave it that way. I got in trouble for leaving the computer in an inoperable state. They had to re-image the whole thing. I feel like I did this once when I was younger and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to get it back. Technology is hard. 6th grade, a classmate got to school without her backpack and I was the only one to notice. School started and she was looking for her bag and I told her that I saw her arrive without it. After which she started yelling at me for no reason, telling everyone that I had hid her bag. I exploded with laughter because it was funny that she was blaming me. Teachers came and sent me to the principal's office. Nobody believed me and I guess giggling didn't help. I was in detention until this kid's mom called the school and let her stupid daughter know that she forgot her backpack at home. I'm 33 now, and not so long ago I saw this girl again. I went to say hello and to remind her of that day, which I still find funny. She didn't react at all to that. Yeah, you're still a jerk, Susan. Freaking Susan. In middle school, one of my friends brought Hello Kitty band-aids to school, and our entire friend group decided to wear them as accessories on our hands and arms because they were cute. Our English teacher wrote us up and demanded that we not wear bandages for the rest of the year because he saw them as gang symbols. A Hello Kitty band-aid gang. I still don't understand his thought process. Sanrio gang rise up? Holding my pencil the wrong way. Teachers hated it. They tried those little rubber things and nothing worked. I just liked my way. I have nice handwriting, by the way. Well, this really irked my 5th grade math teacher. So she started to dock 5 points on every test or quiz I held my pencil wrong. When my father asked what this was about, I told him and he laughed and said, "Keep going." Wait a minute, you had a 5th grade math teacher? You're telling me in the 5th grade you didn't have one teacher that taught you everything? My elementary teacher once freaked out because I was holding not 1, not 2, but 3 pencils at one time. Why the hell do they even care? 4th grade, this crazy girl who was always talking to herself told me about her elaborate plan to kill the teacher. I told the teacher and got in trouble for gossiping. This OP probably got put on the crazy girl's hit list after being a snitch. Talking during lunch. The policy was a silent lunch, also with silent classroom hours, meaning the children weren't allowed to talk, which essentially gave everyone half an hour of recess to get out all that built up energy. Understandably, my 5-year-old self was not down with that. We were in the process of being dismissed anyways. It technically counted as recess time. I have a somewhat common sounding name. However, I only ever really encountered 2 people with my name. One of them was in middle school. He was black. I'm white. One time I got called to the principal's office for something that had happened on the bus on the way to school. I wasn't a bus rider. All the other students involved were black. One look at me and the principal knew it wasn't me, so I was dismissed. The next year, I decided to cut class with a couple of friends. We just took off running across the field, which was behind the cafeteria at the end of lunch. As we ran, one of the administrators saw us, and another friend of ours was close by. Pretty sure he got grilled and ratted us out. My 2 other friends got suspended, but I never heard a peep. I suspect the opposite thing happened. The black kid with my name got called in, and they obviously knew he wasn't involved. Dude, this could be a sitcom. You guys could live together and get into wacky antics and social misunderstandings. Instead of Everybody Loves Raymond, we can call it Everybody Loves Racism. Being left-handed on the first day of first grade, the teacher took away my pencil and made me use my right hand. When my mother picked me up, I told her what happened. She talked to the principal, who apologized, and then called in the teacher to make her apologize. The rest of the school year was very tense. Another event that occurred to me, I got a day of internal suspension in high school for having an overdue library book. I had returned it on time, but the librarian put it on the wrong cart and it was shelved without being scanned back in. I know this because a few days after I returned the book, I saw it on the shelf. I still had to pay the overdue book fine. Dude, I wasn't permitted to graduate college until I returned or paid for a book I only had for 24 hours. Plus late fees because the library lost it. I very much feel your pain. Refusing to dance in kindergarten. We were doing some activity that involved dancing. I didn't want to, and I convinced a friend of mine to join me in protest. So they sent me to the principal's office and called my mom. Damn the man. Dude, this OP was trying to unionize in kinder. Hugging a friend of mine. School had a no PDA rule and they cracked down on it hard. I had just seen my friend for the first time after winter break. I gave her a hug for like a second. I was also female. Teacher saw it and threw a fit and I would end up talking to the principal. Good thing the principal was a smart lady. She let me and my friend off with a warning and I never hugged anyone in school ever again. Did this school happen to be in Florida? Because it gives off Florida vibes. Started a huge conga line my senior year. One morning, I went to my locker and was talking to my friends. We decided to start a conga line for some stupid reason. I was in the front, so I led us down the hallway. I started to point at people and told them to join the party. I told them to invite anybody that they knew. I led us through the cafeteria, through the gym, and when I decided to walk to the principal's office, a teacher stopped us and said that the conga line was a fire hazard since it had gotten so long. I told them that was dumb, and if there was a fire, we'd conga right out of the school. They gave me a good talking to for being a smart butt. Also, I was going to get paddled by the principal for fighting. He told me that he liked me, so he was only going to give me one paddling. I told him if he liked me, he should give me two. I got suspended for that one. I would be shocked if this OP wasn't the class clown because these posts were hilarious. In 5th grade, we were starting an assignment. The TA was going around passing out papers we needed. I was going through my pencil case, kind of mumbling a supply checklist to myself. Pencil, sharpener, eraser. She handed me the sheet and I say, paper. She looks at me all weirdly and walks away. Don't know what that was about, but I just start working. About a minute later, the teacher walks up to me and says I have to stay for detention at recess. What? Reason being, the TA thought I said payback, apparently as in, there will be payback for giving me this paper, I guess? It was completely stupid. I explained myself and they just weren't having it. We argued until lunch and I was getting increasingly pissed off to the point where I was on the verge of tears. Eventually everyone left and the teacher said, okay, I believe you. I don't think that you'd be this upset if you weren't telling the truth. Just apologize and you can go out with the rest of the class. That pissed me off even more, and I asked what I was supposed to apologize for. Just say that you're sorry that we misunderstood you, then you can go play. I took the detention. Hell yeah, I love taking a stand. My elementary days are becoming a bit more foggy as I get older, but I definitely remember being a kid that talked back when a teacher didn't make sense. Definitely got sent to the principal a couple of times too. Cracking my back. The teacher wrote me up for doing gymnastics in class and sent me to the principal. He laughed and asked if I did a barrel roll. I had to have it signed by my parents as well, who also laughed. It was funny for everybody, but at the end of the day, I was still stuck on a Saturday morning doing stupid work. I'm still bitter about it. Reading during class. They were teaching us how to open a Word document. The detention was lunch detention. They assumed that me, a lonely little 6th grader, would be in agony by not eating in the lunchroom, but instead a quiet room. I just happily ate my lunch and read my book more. A woman yelled at me in college about sleeping in her class. I was in an intro to computer class. I had taken every computer class in high school, including Cisco networking and 4 years of Microsoft Office. I explained this and she was still upset that I had finished all of her work for her day in 10 minutes. It was making a super simple PowerPoint, and I decided to nap because the class was at 8 in the freaking morning. Man, must be nice to have computer classes for 4 years of high school. I think we had just one computer class for the 4 years, and just so happened to use computers in other random classes. My senior year of high school, power went out and neither my mom's nor my alarm went off. This was 30 years ago. No cell phone alarms. Neither one of us woke up in time to get me to school on time. She brought me in late with a note saying that it wasn't my fault that I was late. They gave me detention for an unexcused tardy. I go off that it wasn't unexcused, that I had a note that said I wasn't the cause for being late. The office person said that the note wasn't a valid excuse. I say something along the lines of, "So you're telling me that if I had lied and said that I had a doctor's appointment, I would be fine?" She says yes. I tell her that that's BS and all they're doing is telling people to lie instead of tell the truth. She says something along the lines of, "Someday I'll learn that telling the truth is its own reward and that lying has its own consequences." To which I said, "But those consequences aren't a detention." I was furious. I went to the phones at school, pay phones by the way, and called my mom at work. Told her the story, and an hour later I got called back to the office because apparently my mom had written the wrong thing on the note. I was at a doctor's appointment that morning, so I didn't have to serve a detention. In the 4th grade, I drew a picture of Link from Zelda and included a crappy portrayal of the Master Sword. Went to the principal's office and they called my parents. Sounds like you drew Link's other Master Sword. It must have been 1st or 2nd grade. I was sitting with the kid on the bus to school that I got along with. We weren't great friends, but we would talk on the way to school. I have no clue what started this convo, but he started asking me if I thought a grenade would blow up the bus. Well, I guess so. What about an RPG? I guess. A tank definitely could. That wasn't verbatim, but you get the gist. It was some kid just idly daydreaming probably about Call of Duty or something. I do remember that to this day I was reading when that convo started. I replied with nothing other than, "Yeah, that makes sense," or "I guess." We both were suspended from riding the bus for a week. Oh boy, here we go. I was playing Mario Kart DS with my friends on the bus in either 4th or 5th grade. Suddenly, like 4 bombs just fell on me at once. And I turned around and told my friend sitting in the back seat behind me what had happened after he asked what my exasperated "oh no" was for. I'm greeted at the school by a majority of the security guards and forcibly escorted to the principal's office for threatening to drop bombs on the school. I bet this kid hit the bus driver with the blue shell and this was his revenge. English class in the 10th grade. We had a test on a book that we were supposed to be reading. The entire test was short answer and I had literally not read a single word of this book, meaning it would be next to impossible for me to guess any of the correct answers. When the teacher was passing out the exams, I politely said to her, "I'm sorry, but I didn't read at all, so you just have to keep that paper." She told me that she was very disappointed and asked me at least to write my name on the test so that she knew that I was present that day. I wrote my name at the top in pen. According to the syllabus in that class, using the pen on any of the assignments results in -2 points on the grade. I received a -2 on that test. I would have performed better by staying home that day. Man, that teacher was petty. Got yelled at in the 6th grade. I was bused to a bad neighborhood by the guard watching us on the playground for being on the sidewalk, not the blacktop. I said, "Okay, sorry," and I did a little wave. She detained me and drilled me. "What gang sign did you just throw at me?" I was this little 10-year-old white Mormon girl and didn't even know what a gang sign was. My name is spelled with an AH in the middle, which is usually for said name to be spelled for female variant. In year 7, a teacher went off on me when I was writing on the front of a book saying that that wasn't my name and she spelled it wrong on purpose. Cue a very long argument I lost, which resulted in me having to write lines of the spelling without the H in my lunch break, while the teacher berated me for lying about something I wasn't actually lying about. This reminds me of a sub we had that wouldn't believe my classmate's name was Gideon. That's an older name, sure, but it's perfectly normal and biblical even. The sub flipped the freak out, thought everyone was messing with her that was his name, and he got sent down to the principal. There was this kid in my class with obvious behavioral problems, but the school didn't do jack crap to help him. One day at recess, some other kids were playing keep away with his hat. He has a total meltdown and just starts attacking one of the kids, throwing punches, kicking, screaming. Trying to defuse the situation, I walk up behind him and I get him in a bear hug so he stops punching this kid in the face and just keeps saying, "Calm down." At that moment, I hear a teacher screaming my name. I turn and see her watching from a window. A minute later, she comes running outside yelling at me and drags me to the principal's office. My parents are called and I have to have a conference with the teacher, principal, my mom, the other kid, and his parents. Nothing I say matters because the teacher saw me beating this kid up from the window. I ended up with detention, had to apologize to this kid and his parents, and was suspended from the basketball team. I was in the 4th grade. Prior to being dropped off at school by my dad, I had discovered an old school Lego spear. You know, the little brown ones? And a rubber band. I had likewise discovered if you stretched the rubber band around the length of the spear and then pulled slightly on it, you could make a square shape with the spear propping up 2 of the corners. This is amazing, I thought to myself. I conveniently forgot that if you pull the sides of the rubber band too much, then the spear goes flying. So I brought my new square maker toy to show all my friends, and they were about as impressed as you are all reading this. We're waiting in line to go to one of the classes, and I'm showing my friends, and lo and behold, the spear flies out of the rubber band and hits my teacher in the glasses. She just stares at me, I stare at her, and she says, "Go to the principal's office." I find out later that she claims that I attempted to kill her. The principal just laughed while all 3 of us were in the office, and she told me that she had to call my dad and he had to come in. The principal relayed the story, and now my dad's laughing too. I think that teacher was onto something. Kids can be stone cold killers. Yelling no loudly. I was in the 4th or 5th grade. The teacher asked if we wanted to play a game no one liked. Everyone was like, no. And I guess I yelled. I didn't even realize I was louder than the other kids, and I was very confused when I got in trouble. I was sent to sit in a little cubicle near the classroom. The teacher forgot me and they all went to lunch, and some other teacher found me there, crying alone in the dark. And then in high school, the teacher said no talking and the kid next to me asked me a question. And before I could even tell him to shut up, I got detention. He didn't though. I had to copy an essay about how I would bring my letter grade up by paying attention in class. I had straight A's. Another time, in maybe the 7th grade, my friend kept throwing my Hobbit book across the lunchroom, and when I went to go get it, she would bump me off the edge of the bench onto the floor when I tried to sit down. So she goes to throw it again, and I grab her wrist to stop her, and she starts crying, and we both got detention, which I thought was really unfair considering she was bullying me and had literally knocked me to the ground. From my experience, bullies never got in trouble. I got yelled at for consulting an encyclopedia. No formal punishment, the teacher just knew she was wrong and I was about to look up the correct answer. I tell this story too damn much, but here I go. In the 4th grade, we were required to keep a journal. It was an English lesson thing. One time I wrote about my passion at the time, which was insects, and about something that I had learned, which was insect camouflage. The teacher underlined every instance of camouflage and wrote that I spelled it incorrectly. She wrote it spelled CAMOFLAGUE. I was like, what the freak? No, it isn't. I knew this because I didn't know how to spell the damn word, and I had to use a dictionary. And when I looked it up, it was spelled the way I thought it was. I showed the teacher and she insisted the dictionary was wrong. So I got my friend's dictionary, and once again, it was spelled camouflage. CAMOUFLAGE. She insisted that his dictionary was also wrong and that she was correct. I was mad, so I brought a completely different, brand new freaking dictionary to school, where it was spelled the way I thought. She snapped and said if I didn't drop the issue, I would get detention. I dropped it, but I should have kept fighting for it. To her credit, I still remember how to correctly spell camouflage. Kissing my girlfriend. Someone in the house across the street saw, called the school, and I was suspended for a few days. This didn't happen at school, but I got caught by my neighbor feeling up my girlfriend when we were both in the 8th grade outside my house. I just heard this loud knocking from the neighbor's window and we both got super embarrassed. But hey, still touched some honkers. Some jerk of a kid thought it would be funny to attack me out of the blue. I ended up with a sprained wrist and some broken ribs and he was totally fine. I got a week of in-school suspension and he got away scot-free. It was in the 1960s. I was a straight A student. When asked my opinion about a book in class I was reading, I admitted that I thought it was boring. I got 10 lashes with a leather strap on each hand and a month of after-school detention. I had some kid prepared to hit me in the face with the football. I decided to grab his arm and take the football out of his hand. Another kid then took the ball and threw it at him. He went off and cried, saying that I hit him and threw the football at him. Everyone in class took the stance of no snitching, and I got suspended because no one would verify my side of the story. So much for defending myself. This was the 6th grade. I got into an argument with the kid who bullied me a lot. So I told him, at least my parents like each other. His parents were divorced. Jerk move, I know. But this kid was also a huge jerk. Anyways, he gets pissed and leaves. I think, finally, he'll leave me alone. He returns with a big rock and bashes me in the head with it. I'm knocked out and have to get carried back to the nurse's office by another kid, leaving a trail of blood. It required a few stitches. So I get suspended for 3 days and 1 day of in-school suspension for bullying. The other kid went home for half the day. I have had a few situations in my public school life, but that made me lose complete faith in the administration. My buddy tackled me out of the blue and we both got in trouble for roughhousing. Understandable, but when we both told the powers that be that I had nothing to do with it and that he had tackled me out of nowhere for no reason, I remained in trouble because I hadn't dodged the attack. No joke.
What happened at a wedding that let you know the marriage was going to end in a divorce? The groom looked drunk and the bride seemed incredibly angry. Then there was this woman walking around during the reception placing bets on when they would divorce. I later found out she was the mother of the groom. The groom said in his speech, "When I joined a dating agency, I never thought I'd be so lucky as to find my own personal cook, dishwasher, and washing machine. Not only is that a crappy way to describe anyone, he's in for a nasty surprise when he realizes his wife is actually a complete diva and will expect him to do all those things for her. Bad relationship all around." Groom's mistress found out he was getting married and showed up at the wedding, in the middle of the I-do's, walked right up on stage and smacked him in the face, pulling a Will Smith slap before the Will Smith slap even happened. The groom stabbed his new brother-in-law to death with the knife used to cut the wedding cake, no less. Well, technically it happened at the reception, not the wedding. Yeah, that's a detail I was worried about, and not the fact that somebody was stabbed to death at a wedding. Backstory. About 4 years before the wedding, the wife's brother had shot her in the leg during an argument. Yes, alcohol was involved. At the reception, he started loudly telling the guests that he wished he'd shot her in the head instead, at which point the groom got stabby. Alcohol was, again, involved. At the rehearsal dinner, the groom's mom is in tears because he looks miserable. And he was. We all knew it. During the vows they had written for each other, the bride starts with, "I know I could be a pretty terrible person, and I don't know why you've stuck around, but that's all going to change starting today." They were divorced a year later. She flinched when he turned to kiss her. They were divorced within 6 months. The bride had the minister put "till death or divorce do us part" into the ceremony. My cousin, the bride, told us as she was going from table to table thanking the guests that she didn't think it would last. We were stunned. They lasted about a year. I thought my sister's wedding was. Her husband got blackout drunk and they got into an argument. He passed out and she ended up throwing a bucket of ice water in his face to snap him out of it. She was devastated about it. Happy ending? He made it up to her big time. Also, he felt very out of it, even the next day. Turns out he had traces of Rohypnol in his system. His own brother roofied him in hopes he wouldn't marry my sister because he wanted their own friendship to remain the same. My brother-in-law has disowned most of his family because of this, and his brother just got out of a 4-year prison sentence. The bride, whom I didn't even know, apparently designated me to help decorate the reception hall prior to the wedding. I went to do so, and her mother was there, telling me in a hushed, scared whisper that I better not mess anything up because the bride would be furious. Everything was to be a certain way, and if it was wrong, there'd be hell to pay. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, chalked it up to wedding anxiety, and during the reception, I tried to chat with her a bit, and she literally rolled her eyes at me. I also didn't see her look at the groom once at the wedding or the reception. They were split less than a year later. Later, the groom confided to me and my husband that the morning of the wedding, he'd been filled with an overwhelming feeling of dread and spent several hours just sitting on his lawn thinking, I shouldn't do this. But it was paid for, tons of guests were waiting, lots of family, including us, had come in from out of state, and he felt he had to go through with it. Apparently, the bride had a history of being awful and controlling. No clue what made him propose to her in the first place. Edit. Just Facebook stalked the ex-bride. Her latest status update is announcing her wedding date with a new guy. Someone jokingly asked in the comments if they set a date for the divorce. Oh snap! Holy crap. My cousin Jan's wedding was basically just a preamble to an elaborate dance of divorce that we all knew was coming from the moment the engagement began. For context, this took place 15 years ago in the backwoods of North Carolina. My family is just a generation or two removed from snake handling in church, so some of the wackiness is the product of upwardly mobile inbreeding and redneck gumption. Just a few things that come to mind. Her fiancé proposed to her over the corpse of her father. He was over with the family watching TV when Jan's dad collapsed on the floor. He died before emergency services arrived. Her boyfriend grabbed her hands as she was sitting next to her father's body, pulled her up to her feet, and then asked her to marry him. He later said that he didn't want her to get away. The fiancé then disappeared for a month the week after the funeral. Nobody knew where to find him. The bride's white trash mother told Jan that she had to get married within 4 months because she, the mother, my aunt, planned to move to another state with her new boyfriend to avoid bill collectors. When Jan's fiancé showed back up, he was cagey and weird. Eventually, it came out that he'd been living with his ex-girlfriend because she insisted that he had to give to her a month of his life or she'd take him to court for child support that he was supposed to be paying on their infant son, but had never paid. Throughout all of this, Jan continued to insist that she wanted to marry him. My mother and I did most of the wedding prep and arrangements. Jan's mom, despite insisting on the 4-month timeline to help pay for the wedding before her move, never contributed a dime. And we were both pretty convinced that the wedding was going to be canceled at any moment. But the day arrived, and so did the principal players. At the wedding itself, the groom walked around drinking PBR out of a massive travel thermos with a novelty straw and told everyone who would listen that Jan was a good starter wife. Jan threw several tantrums about stupid stuff, including one in which she accused the groom of stealing her drink. He told her she was a dumb woman, but it all worked out because she then found her drink. The groom pulled the ring off of Jan's finger during the reception and swallowed it as a joke. The groom picked a fight with his father because his dad had asked the ex-girlfriend to stay at home, and the groom had really wanted her to be there. Jan was in the dark about this invitation until the fight broke out. Epilogue, shocking precisely nobody, except possibly Jan herself, they eventually did divorce. Eating the ring caused the groom some discomfort, so they had to cancel their honeymoon to the mountains so that he could go to the ER and get hospital-grade laxatives. They lost money on the cancellation and the ER visit, which they really didn't have to lose. That resulted in some immediate debt problems, and they lost the trailer they planned to rent when they couldn't come up with a deposit. That resulted in both of them moving into the groom's parents' home into his old bedroom. Things went downhill from there. The groom's ex-girlfriend popped back up less than 3 months after the wedding, heavily pregnant with a second child. She went after him for another shared month, but Jan wasn't cool with it. The ex ended up taking him to court for child support. Jan got a second job to make ends meet while resigning herself to living with her in-laws for a while longer. One day, after he dropped her off at work, the groom sold Jan's car. He then disappeared for several more weeks. She lost both jobs and shortly thereafter realized she was pregnant. The groom accused her of cheating because he thought he couldn't have more than 2 children in a lifetime, and his ex-girlfriend had already filled the quota. As I understand it, this is what ultimately caused the rift in their relationship. Back to normal stories. Groom got caught getting frisky with the bridesmaid. That marriage lasted for about 2 hours. When the father of the bride tells the groom, "How can you marry somebody like her? You are too nice. You deserve better." Surely enough, the marriage lasted less than 3 years. During the whole time, the wife was doing drugs and prostituted herself to get money for drugs. We knew the couple was in trouble when they frowned during most of the ceremony and later didn't go on a honeymoon because they couldn't agree on a destination. They had plenty of money, just no desire to compromise. At the end of the reception, the guys were sitting at a table away from everyone else talking, and we asked the groom why he proposed. His answer? Because she was naked. Marriage lasted about 1.5 years. At my brother's wedding, his bride gave him the cheek at the "you may kiss the bride" part. Yeah, she ended up cheating on him with some guy online in less than a year. My sister's new husband made out with the bridesmaid on the dance floor of the reception. During the ceremony, when the priest started asking the bride, "Do you take this man to be your..." she started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop. It was cute for about 10 seconds and then things got real uncomfortable. They lasted 1 year and change. We all kinda knew the only reason they were getting married was because she got pregnant. Groom got so drunk at the reception he passed out in the honeymoon suite by himself, but not before he latched the door so it couldn't be unlocked from the outside. Seeing the bride kicking the door and hollering at the top of her lungs to be let in at 3 a.m. was not encouraging. They divorced like 2 years later. I was working at a wedding factory. On Monday, we got a call the Saturday wedding was canceled. They were told that they would lose the deposit, around $7,000. Then on Thursday, they said it was back on. When the guests arrived, everyone was mad. It seems they told everyone that it was off, then 2 days later that it was on. The ceremony was about 3 minutes. The bride then changed into sweatpants and then everyone got angry drunk. Well, this won't last long, I thought. Then on the following Monday, the bride walked into my then-wife's divorce attorney's office. Our friend was the girl who had spent a whole year setting up for the one day. They had taken 6 months of dancing lessons, and she has spent a ridiculous amount of time looking good and dressing up her bridesmaids for the wedding, of which my wife was one. So, come the night of the wedding, the groom meets up with his old friends and starts to get blackout drunk. He got so drunk he didn't even recognize us, rather just pushing us aside to get to the bathroom. The worst part was the dance itself. It was really heartbreaking to see them stumble around and watch the panic on her face as he realized he had no idea what was going on. I gave it 6 months at the time, but they ended up 3 years. She ended up marrying another woman. Groom mashed the cake into the pregnant bride's face so hard she went down backwards. Groom and his father ended up fistfighting in the bathroom, cops were called, fun times. It was a shotgun wedding. They proudly proclaimed it as such. Overheard the bride's mother saying that the bride was such a later bloomer for waiting until 19 to trap herself a man. The child is 3 years old and they have been separated, don't know if divorced, since she was 1. Walking in on the groom getting railed by one of the groomsmen in the suite at the resort during the reception. My cousin's wedding. The groom invited his ex, who was also the mother of his 1-year-old son. He and my cousin had been dating for longer than 2 years. And my cousin, who was then very pregnant herself, got into a loud screaming match with him over in a bathroom. They eventually came out and got married, my cousin with puffy red eyes from crying that you can see in every wedding photo that was taken. They spent $50,000 on a Disney wedding and the bride spent 0 time anywhere near the in-laws for several hours. She ran off a week later. While saying the classic "I do," instead of looking deep into his bride's eyes, the groom was peeking at one of the bridesmaids. I do audio-visual for social events, a lot of weddings. At one engagement party, my coworker tells the story of the soon-to-be groom trying to carry off his soon-to-be bride, because he's manly and will have his way with her. Anyways, she is screaming at him to put her down, and when he finally complies, she slaps him right across the face and yells, "I'm not done dancing!" When I was 17, I was a bridesmaid in my 19-year-old cousin's shotgun wedding. After the ceremony, we got into the limo to go to the reception. She turns to me and says, "God, I wish I was single." The groom didn't look at the bride once. Sister's wedding. Husband ends speech saying, "Thanks for settling for me." 18 months later, agreed to divorce. 4 people made speeches. The bride joked about the first time she dated the groom when she was 16 and he was 26. The groom was wasted and spoke about how each of the previous times they broke up didn't count and that they would do it right this time. The maid of honor talked about how even when they were broken up they still got along, and the best man made crappy jokes. Groom's brother didn't attend because he too had banged the bride before. The groom invited his female friend. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. Towards the end of the night, the bride asked aforementioned friend who the father was. The friend cheerfully said the groom's name. The bride got blackout drunk and asked me to kill her husband. He was busy fighting one of his groomsmen in the other room. They divorced 2 years later. The day of her wedding, I asked my sister-in-law if she was enjoying her day, and all she said was, "It's a freaking nightmare. This is the worst day of my life." Dude said the wrong name at the altar. When I read this one, I went, uh-oh. I was reunited with a family member just before her wedding. We went out drinking, and she proudly pointed out a guy at the bar that she'd just gone on a trip with and had a week-long prenup rail romp. She seemed to think I'd think that was naughty and funny. I just felt bad for her future husband, but figured it was just a bad choice. The day of the wedding, I went to see her in the bridal suite. She had the guy there with him. She screwed him the night before the wedding. They lasted a few years, but it was a miserable few. My cousin married a nice, respectable girl from Connecticut, but he is a not-so-nice, not-so-respectable Massachusetts stereotype from Norfolk County. Cuz got drunk with his band of Mickeys and Sullys the night before, and when I saw him for pictures that morning, he was sucking on a pint of Skull vodka before throwing it in the corner of the church and calling his friend a slur. He had the same grin on his face for every picture. I pumped some coffee into him. We thought we had it under control, but during the ceremony, he flipped off the guest twice. His brother also taped "Help Me" on the bottom of his shoes for when they took the mass. The bride's father was furious. But then came the reception. My mom didn't want to go. I wish we hadn't. Cuz continued sucking down booze, as did his pals. The bride, God save her, wanted to go ahead with the first dance, Stand By Me. Cuz didn't put down his drink, was grabbing her butt during the dance, and finally spilled it all down her dress. She slapped him, he pushed her. Father of the groom charges the dance floor. The bench is clear. My brother and I ask Mom if she wants us to get involved. She grabs her purse and says, "Let's leave." As his buddies were holding Cuz back, she walked over, slapped him, and said, "Thank God your grandmother died, you disgraceful little Mick." Mama is a very quiet woman. We grabbed Mama and hightailed it out. 2 cops passed us on the way in. They began the annulment 1 week later. I haven't talked to him since, although he emailed me asking if he could borrow $5,000. He lives in a camper from what I hear. Friend got married. On his honeymoon, his wife went to the spa. He stayed in the room to chill. Housekeeping came, young cute girl. Friend paid her for head. Told me about all proud. Didn't last a year. Toward the end of the reception, the bride suggested to the groom he run home and change into street clothes so they could clean the venue and get the deposit returned. Groom got back, and bride had opened all the gift envelopes and paid back relatives with the cash they contained. Source: the groom was me. I was in charge of choosing a male strip club for the bachelorette party. I went to check a place out, bumped into the groom in the audience. We've got a timeline for this one. A bunch of my family members are betting on how long one of my cousin's marriage would last. It's definitely going to end in divorce, but we just don't know when. Here's all the crap that happened. Pre-wedding, the couple can't even agree on invitation card designs, so they decided each would have their own. Some people received 2 invitations. Wedding. They're both from different races, and the groom's family insisted on having a wedding ceremony from their culture too. The bride refused the part where she has to kneel before her husband and wash his feet clean. The groom's family insisted, and she was stuck doing it. The bride got tired with all the photo taking and refused to pose for any more photographs, even though she hadn't taken photos with the groom's extended family. Meanwhile, she had already taken photos with her entire family, extended family, and parents' friends. The groom's cousin told the bride she walked in elegantly and she spent hours crying and refusing to come out for the wedding dinner. Half the groom's family boycotted the wedding over the bride's race and religion. Post-wedding, the bride insisted they should fly first class for their honeymoon. The groom insisted it's a waste of money, even though they had both come from money. The bride flew first class, the groom stuck to economy. Wedding was going okay until the bride and groom got hammered, groom's baby mama ex showed up, and the bride proceeded to lock herself in a room crying and continuing to drink by herself. It was a crap show to say the least. OP says, "How long do you wait to leave in a scenario like that?" I wasn't there, but my neighbor is a wedding DJ. Apparently a couple of weeks ago, she was at a wedding where the bride did her first dance with her ex, who for some reason was invited, because he was a better dancer than her new husband, and she didn't want to get, in her words, shown up. My cousin got his casual hookup pregnant, and somehow they came to the conclusion that they needed to get married. Instead of going and getting quietly married, they decided they needed a gigantic, expensive wedding. Like 5-course meal, 300 plus guests, 12 bridesmaids kind of wedding. Obviously, something like this takes a while to plan, and as a result, she was about 7 months pregnant. Now, nothing wrong with going down the aisle while expecting, but she chose this corseted dress that was cinched so tight it nearly flattened her bump out. As someone who has been pregnant, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that must have been. The fact that they had only known each other 8 months and she was 7 months pregnant was like the elephant in the room the entire wedding. She refused to acknowledge the fact that she was pregnant. She had been out of college for 10 plus years and invited all her sorority sisters. They got up and all sang this weird sorority song together. Very odd for an over 30 woman. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it was like she was trying to act like she was much younger. They were married about 4 years, way longer than anyone thought it would last. Married less than a year, and a mutual friend my wife and I had got married. During the ceremony, my wife is crying and I asked her why, expecting a response of happy for him or something, and she said, "I always thought I will be the one to marry him." She ended up cheating on me with him and we went our separate ways. They only got married because they screwed unprotected on their first date and conceived a child. Fast forward a few months, the bride objects to going to the groom's friend for flowers for the wedding because she has a religious objection to the gay lifestyle, in quotes. Turns out she's also incredibly racist. The groom is not homophobic or racist at all and was appalled to find out that his new wife wouldn't approve of most of his friends. The baby hasn't even been born yet and the divorce is pending. The groom saying the bride looked really chubby in her wedding dress. The groom making fun of the deaf grandmother. The groom existing. Not all of it was at the wedding, but on our way to our honeymoon, we were on a flight with this couple sitting behind us. She boarded the plane with a giant carry-on and a garment bag with a dress in it. Once they found their seats, she shoved her bags at him to put away, and then went to use the lavatory for about 15 minutes. She was really nasty towards him the whole time. Fast forward into running into them at the resort. She was super stuck up and a jerk to every female and all of the staff. She didn't seem to have a problem grinding on 4 or 5 different guys during one of the dance night themed events while her husband drank alone at the bar. Finally, the day of their wedding came, and my husband ran into the groom sitting alone outside of the cafe with a drink in his hand. He sat down to chat with him, and the guy explained that he was freaking out because they had no friends or family at the wedding, because literally no one that knew him liked her or approved of the wedding, and that he wasn't even sure what he was doing there. My husband tells him he's sure it's cold feet, and to just have a drink to calm his nerves. The groom replies that it's his 5th drink. It's like 11 a.m. already. We had an oceanfront villa and they got married right outside of our back door. He looked like he was going to bolt for sure. I guess that was her plan the whole time, trap him on a remote island. Her vows. They were friends of mine who dated for nearly 2 years before their wedding. He loved her more than she loved him, obvious to all our friends. and we suspected she begrudgingly said yes to his proposal. He said his vows first and went on and on about loving her for the rest of his life. During hers, she started with 438 days. That's how long I've loved you. It seemed sweet until she ended her vows with, and I promise to love you for at least 438 more. Most thought nothing of it, and some friends called me a jerk for saying it was a subconscious sign that she wasn't in it for the long haul. She left him exactly that amount of days after the wedding with the note that said, I kept my vow to love you for 438 days more, but I can't for a single day more. Called it. At the wedding, bride-to-be turns up 30 minutes late, arrives inconsolably sobbing, helped down the aisle. Ceremony weird and filled with cries from the bride. Afterwards, spoke to the bride's father and asked how things were. His response, well, that was like getting a cat in a paper bag. Divorced 3 months later. Backstory, the groom, whom we knew, was from a wealthy family. Bride's family saw money and persuaded their darling daughter to marry the guy. She realized the mistake. She ended up with nothing. His family had money, but the groom was young and had nothing. Screwed up people out here, folks. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.